Hello and welcome everybody to the 29th episode of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast. It's difficult to believe that we would have done 29 episodes, but as proof, here it is for your consumption. Hopefully you enjoy what we develop, deliver and or produce. That being myself, Dan. Hello, and joined as ever by my good buddy Phil. How's life, Phil?
I'm good, thank you.
Doing well? Feeling good?
I am indeed. I'm doing my last minute prep for No Retreat, which is in about 2 weeks' time. So I'm frantically painting up the last few units.
Incredible. That's exciting stuff, man. Good times ahead for you then.
Yeah, should be really good. Looking forward to it. Good
times. And in addition to Phil, we're also joined by the internet star known as Joe. How are you, Joe?
I'm alright. I'm living in the heady heights of social media mediocre fame.
That's it. You got something in the ballpark of 1,500 to 2,000 likes for a picture you took.
I'm about 3 or 4 likes shy of the of 1,500. I'm 7 shy. No, 6 shy. 6 shy of 1,500, which is about 1,100 more than I got on my other highest. So it's
quick plug your Instagram so people can like it.
It's on. So it's subtle painting, and I've actually had a lot more followers recently as well, which is pretty cool.
It's almost like the two of you somehow linked.
So somehow. Although I don't have as many followers as I do as people that liked it, which makes me sad.
There you go.
But that's fine. I can live with that.
Those
but it's
fickle masses.
And it's very cool though. Although I have discovered that the 2 things on my Instagram that have the most amount of likes is Ancients, as in Chapter Ancients. So people love them flags.
Flags.
It's all
cool.
about. It's about the flags.
Exactly.
They want more.
And on the topic of individuals cooler than flags, we're joined also by the adorable Richie. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing alright. I was just struggling with my mute button. I'm doing alright. I'm really happy to be here. It's good to know that I'm cooler than a flag.
Well, exactly. Absolutely. Although potentially less culturally relevant.
Definitely less culturally relevant, and I don't think I've got anywhere near as many likes as Joe's picture of one of his faces. Actually, no. Have you broke 1,000 yet?
What?
He just said he's almost got to 1,500, mate. Pay attention.
I was definitely paying attention. Well, he's definitely outclassed me on that. The most likes I've ever got was when I did my trolling post about the amount of gear on was it the Primaris Lieutenant Phobos edition? So it's a great model. Joe, it's good to see your great work getting the appreciation it deserves.
There you go. More people like Joe's Instagram post than listen to our show. Fun fact.
Well, Joe, you should let everyone who's liking your Instagram post know to listen to the show.
Well, exactly.
Well, I do advertise our podcast on my Instagram.
But clearly not well enough, Joe, because that internet fame hasn't dribbled over to us yet.
And what we need to do is do one of those giveaways, which is like and subscribe to our page, and someone will win this box of free stuff.
No, we can't be doing that.
Yeah, that just gets you fake bot followers who don't really care.
Exactly. You get fickle fans that way. We want legitimate, real fans. So, if any of you out there are listening to us and really enjoy this regular podcast that we put together, especially for you and people like you. Potentially people like you include those people that you know. So maybe, just maybe, you could tell them and they could find a newfound fandom for us. And then maybe, just maybe, we'd have slightly more than the 1,500 people who liked Joe's post listening to our podcast. Wouldn't that be lovely?
That would be lovely.
So there you go. This is my plea to you, my friendly friends, the listeners. Go out there and tell your friends. I'm sure your mother and father or, significant other would be incredibly interested in hearing what we have to say about Warhammer 40,000. So, share the joy of the Lookout Sir podcast, please.
Please.
There you go.
Please, sir.
I think we delivered that with a certain level of I was going to say insincerity, but no, sincerity. I think we did that well. Don't you reckon, Phil?
For sure.
There you go. Beautiful. Anyway, so for
Doesn't
today's
reek of
show...
desperation.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
I said it doesn't reek of desperation at all.
No. Not like so many other segments within the show. But
Yeah.
there we go. On the topic of the show, I mean, this is episode 29, guys. So we're about to embrace, or, embark, I should say, on episode 30, which is an exciting milestone, wouldn't you agree?
It's pretty
for
awesome.
sure.
It's
Do you
hard.
think we need to do something special for it?
The problem is every time we kind of gesture or, imply that something special will occur, we inevitably just do the same thing we do always. But, throw a bit more abuse Joe's way. So I guess that's what we'll do for episode 30. A little bit more Joe abuse would be good. Or maybe we could have the return of the Joe show. Wouldn't that be a treat?
Oh, no, don't put that pressure on me. No, people didn't like it.
I think that's what the fans would want, though.
I mean,
The
the
Joe
metrics
show.
show otherwise. But there you go. But yeah, no, 30 episodes, man. I mean, genuinely, I'm really, really proud of all of us involved in this project that we got to 30 episodes, or that we're about to get to 30 episodes, barring any natural disasters, acts of God, and so on and so forth. We will actually achieve 30 episodes, which is incredible when you think that, realistically, I don't imagine any of us thought we'd get off of 10. So it's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It's pretty good.
Exactly. I put it all down to, the return of Rich to the United Kingdom. I think he's been the added X factor that's taken us to these, 30, well, nearly soon to be 30 episodes. Don't you agree, Rich?
I think that's far too high praise for my middling experience working on the quiz, but it's very appreciated you saying so.
There you go. Well, it has to be something. I mean, your social media skills, if nothing else, have been appreciated. It's definitely better than when Joe used to do it, that's for sure.
Yeah. There's
I mean,
been
that's
a
not
whole...
difficult.
That is
Like,
true.
you've logged in. It helped.
Exactly. But it's clear that Joe can do it. That's the really annoying bit, isn't it? Because, look, on his own social media, he's got 1,500 people liking his stuff. But he couldn't do that for us, could he? Couldn't do that for
Because
us.
but mine is like, here's a picture of something I did. Please like me. Please validate my existence.
I'm failing to understand how you couldn't have done that on our time.
I just put a picture up of our stuff. Maybe we just don't end the flags in it. Richie, as an experiment for the next Instagram post, just put loads of flags on it. Just literally just a smear of flags.
So I should go out my way to share images of people who've done like flags or
flags.
Standard bearers.
Yeah.
Joe, can we get you to record a sort of fun with flags style spoof segment from like the
Bang Theory.
Yeah, from the Big Bang Theory? Can we do a Joe's fun with flags?
Yeah, why not?
Brilliant. There you go. He said it now. That definitely won't happen. Anyway, on the podcast today, there's only going to be 2 segments, but they're 2 fantastic segments. The first of which will be the whatever we end up calling it, not the end of the show quiz. I think we're pretty much settled on not the end of the show quiz, right?
I think so.
Yeah, unless we get a better suggestion from the fans.
Well, exactly. We're still waiting for those suggestions to come in, such as our engagement and or involvement with these things. We definitely need to make a post about that on the old Instagram. It tends to be that people respond to that when we ask them to, but not
I'll get on it.
as a result of listening to the podcast. Anyway, but nonetheless, we're going to do that, which is going to be exciting because we're going to be covering a whole, plethora of news-related topics, most notably the ensuing psychic, whatever it's called, psychic thing, psychic maelstrom, what's it called?
Psychic
Psychic Awakening.
Psychic Awakening, thank you. That's going to be talked about, as well as the new Iron Hands and or Raven Guard rules, and a bunch of other things that will come up in conversation also. And then, closing out the show, we're going to be talking to Tim, who was unfortunately unable to be with us the first time around to talk about Grand Tournament Heat 2. So Tim is going to be sitting down with me and Phil. It should have been Joe, but because of technical difficulties, I managed to lose that recording that we did the first time around. So Joe was unfortunately absent from the second revised recording. But nonetheless, we will still talk to Tim about his performance in Grand Tournament Heat 2, and he will tell us how his Craftworld Off-Way army did for him. So there we go, guys. I reckon that pretty much sums everything up pretty nicely. So we will transition now to the not the end of the show quiz.
Fingers on buzzers, everyone, because it's time for the end of the show quiz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Not the End of the Show quiz. After, I'd like to say, roaring success from last week. Well, people enjoyed it. We definitely enjoyed it. Joe didn't, because Joe wasn't here for it, but he is here this week.
I am indeed.
Are you looking forward to it, Joe?
I am, actually. I'm interested to see what happens, what it sounds like. Also, inevitably interested to find out what Dan chooses for my buzzer. So, it's all good.
Entirely up to me, Joe. I mean, you are allowed to submit a buzzer for my consideration.
Oh, really?
Oh, of course, that's always an option. It's not necessarily, correct that I will ever use it, but you can at least make suggestions from time to time.
Okay. I'm going to mull this one over.
Exactly. At the moment, I'm feeling like some kind of obscure Michelangelo quote from the lesser-known live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series that they did in the kind of mid-90s.
Oh,
Wasn't that just a movie?
No. There was a series they did which was done by the guys at Saban who do the Power Rangers series, or at least used to before. I think Mattel bought it recently, or Hasbro, or somebody. But anyway, the point is there was a really famous but ultimately not very good series of Turtles shows that were old, and they had some very weird dialogue in it. So I was going to try and find something from that for Joe.
Was that the one where they were all absolutely terrifying to look at?
Yes, and there was a lady turtle for the first time back then.
God.
Yeah, lady turtle.
Did she happen to have a pink bandana by any chance?
No, she had a turquoise blue banner. And then
Oh.
she had some very, very, very strange turtle shell boobies.
That's creepy.
It is really creepy, yeah. I'll share some imagery with you later.
Yeah, for the listeners at home, come back after you've checked that.
Yeah, exactly. Look into that. While Phil does his whole he-steer bit, I can find the name of it. Hang on. Phil?
Oh yeah, Phil's here too.
Yeah.
And I'm here. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, there we go. That's good. That's taken all the hair out of the room.
Well, we're glad to have you, Phil, as our reigning champion of the
thanks
Not the
very
End
much.
of the Show quiz. The phenomenal
Jay.
job last week.
You took back the crown, didn't you? After it was all leveled up.
That's true, yeah. Because you weren't there, basically.
That's it. When Joe's not around, Phil steals the show.
And
Nice.
Dan didn't know anything except Space Marine, so that's what I let him do.
Well, I knew a few bits and pieces. I just didn't know very much about Air Automated. I don't even know what it's called anymore. The plane game and the other thing.
Aeronautica Imperialis.
Yeah, Aeronautica Imperialis. And what was the other topic?
Psychic Awakening. Oh, we did some Blackstone Fortress in there.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know any of the rules from Blackstone Fortress. There you go.
Now, there's a lot of news from the wider 40k universe for last week's. Well, not last week's, 2 weeks ago's Not the End of the Show quiz. This time, however, it's a little more focused. There's been less varied news, but it should still be very exciting. And we can see if Joe can come back out of nowhere. And
I hope so. I'm a little bit sad I wasn't here for the Aeronautica one because, although I haven't played that game, I do actually really like it. I love the model.
And you like rustling your paint pot around as well. I can hear in the background.
No, that's definitely not me.
Of course it is.
Yeah. And if it's anything, it would be a paperclip.
What are you mucking around with paper clips for? I suppose you're pinning stuff. Is that what's going on?
No, my banner, which I made, which got all the likes on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Me and Instagram. We've already talked about it once already, Joe. You're going to bring it up again?
Well, I was going to say that the main piece of it is one giant paperclip. And I dropped it and the banner broke off.
Oh,
So, it's an absolute spud.
there you go.
Well, on that bombshell, shall we test everyone's buzzers?
Why ever not?
I think it's important we didn't last week, and some people were disappointed we didn't do the buzzer test. Mostly on the show itself, people were disappointed. But for you guys on recording, let's go through the buzzers. Let's start with Joe. Let's test your buzzer.
All right then, here we go.
You know, I work out every day.
I can only imagine how terrifying that buzzer sound was.
It can't sound nearly as bad as the tedious 10-minute long conversation we had trying to work out what went wrong with your Skype during that process.
Oh, I know, it's just technical faults.
I might put that at the end of the show, actually. If anyone wants to be entertained, you can skip right to the end where you'll hear that great outtake of Joe being a silly boy.
Yeah. I don't know how phones and computers and stuff work.
A fact that is becoming ever more evident every day.
Well, let's see if Phil knows how buzzers and computers and things work as we test out his buzzer.
Okay, I'll give mine a go.
Men are dirty, sir. Rifles are clean.
Well, that's a lovely new buzzer you got there, Phil.
It's in honour of a TV show I've been watching recently, which relates to the character that I've been creating and painting at the moment.
Well, there we go. I'm glad that we don't, record this and then edit in the buzzers. Otherwise, I still have no frame of context of what you're talking about.
But assuming we do have contacts, that's a very good fit, Phil. Well done. Good choice.
Yeah, well done. Good work. Good work right there.
But saving, something till last, it's Dan's buzzer.
Well, here we are. My buzzer, if you please.
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages?
There it is. Another fantastic example of buzzetry.
Just to be clear for the listeners at home, the other guys did actually press their buzzer to test it, whereas Dan's just assumed he's pressing. Oh yeah, now you're pressing the button. Okay, there you go.
There you go. Sorry, I didn't realise I had to go through that level of pretense to try and create this whole illusion that we do.
Well, it's testing the sound works, also testing the good chaps at Buzzin Live is working.
Well, exactly. All right, I didn't realise it was part of a technical test that extended to that, full degree.
Okay, well, without further ado, we will get on and begin this instalment of the Not the End of the Show quiz.
It's probably for the best.
Probably for the best. Starting with Section 1, which is the Space Marines FAQ. Those of you who remember, those who have listened to last week's quiz, which probably doesn't include Joe, because I don't think you actually listen to the one you're not on, do you?
He doesn't even listen to the ones he's on.
I don't listen to any of them. I'm that showbiz now.
Well, there you go. So Joe may be at a disadvantage. On the last quiz, we talked about lots of changes, including one particularly big change, which made a lot of units in the Space Marine army, in some of the Space Marine units, completely kind of useless now. But that was fixed in the FAQ. To which fix am I referring?
Oh, I can buzz now.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Dan has buzzed in.
There you go. You didn't reset the buzzer while asking the question. It was so
No, I quickly did. I thought no one would notice.
You were referring to the fact that certain units had not yet received the Angels of Death rule, but now have via amends.
That's absolutely correct. A lot of the units that we said last week are dead, gone, useless, like chaplains on bikes, that kind of thing. No,
Yeah.
They're still good. They're still good to use. Don't get rid of them just yet.
Boom. Magical times. See the advantages, Joe, of turning up.
I know. I can't remember what I was doing last week, but I'm sure it has put me in a terrible place now.
Well, exactly. And it wasn't even last week, Joe. It was 2 weeks ago, if you remember. The passage of time.
I don't. It's all just a mystery to me now.
I think it was your girlfriend's birthday, Joe.
Oh, yes. That's why. I remember that she
Well, no, I
existed.
feel like you've used that excuse a number of times. It sounds like she's had 3 birthdays in the last year.
Well, they
Oh,
could
no,
be different girlfriends.
Oh! Let's hope she doesn't listen.
The other two will be well upset. No, I normally just say that like a grandparent's sick, or I'm sick, or like I can't find my shoes. Just arbitrary things like that.
Wonderful.
Speaking of not being able to find shoes, and which tangential is not really connected at all, but from the Space Marines FAQ, there was one thing that was quite surprising and somewhat unexpected, a large buff, if you will. What was that large buff that was hidden in the FAQs? No one's buzzing in so far. Okay, let me put it this way. Let me rephrase the question. There's a certain rule that was added in to the new Codex Space Marines, and that which didn't apply to index units, or it didn't apply to some of the index units, but now has been added so it does apply to them. And I don't mean the Angels of Death rule. Which rule is it? Oh, Dan has buzzed in.
There you go. I was just sort of waiting to see if either of the other lads did, but I'm assuming they
Men
now
are dirty,
also
sir.
gain access to
Rifles are
tactical doctrines.
And that's part of Angels of Death, but that's not what I was referring.
Oh.
Phil.
I was going to say, is it something to do with the new chapter tactics?
Nothing to do with the chapter tactics. There's 4 specific models, of which one is a type of model, and then 3 special variants all gained this ability from the indexes.
Oh, is it?
You're gonna have to buzz in.
Oh.
Joe.
You know, I
There we
go
go.
out every
Special
day.
Is
Joe's
it special
busted.
character chaplains getting litanies?
Can you be more specific?
So,
I'll give it to you because that is roughly the correct answer. The correct answer is that all chaplains in the index, but most specifically chaplain dreadnoughts, also get litanies.
Oh. That makes absolutely sense.
Well, someone was very excited to hear that.
Oh, Joe, you're taking it to the next level, mate.
No, sorry, that was me.
Was that
That
Phil?
was me. That was me dropping my airbrush on the floor because I accidentally elbowed it.
You're not airbrushing whilst you're doing it.
No, I'm not. It was just on the side, and I knocked it off.
Is this because Joe got a question right? Is this the shock and disappointment that you thought to yourself, well, I've got to try and beat him at something, so I'll make even more racket?
I'm sorry.
I'll put it him.
I'll put it that way.
If you're experiencing the Look Out Sir 40k podcast for the first time, be assured that this is unfortunately the usual standard of quality that we come to expect from our broadcast.
Why don't you just edit that bit out?
No, it's much better.
So we don't bust some eardrums otherwise.
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll make it quiet. I'll make it a soft sound.
Fair enough.
Add in some farmer-like swearing in the background.
I don't think I
So,
need to. I think he just did it.
So before Phil knocked over his airbrush in excitement, yeah, the news was that in the FAQ, chaplain, venerable dreadnoughts, and special character varieties, as well as all chaplains in the indexes, gained the litanies rules, which means now you can have super buffed up chaplain dreadnoughts, which is pretty exciting.
They're pretty badass now, actually.
Especially if they're going to be Iron Hands. Oh, baby!
Oh god, yeah. Although I actually think the White Scars one's probably going to be better, or a Blood Angels one.
Yeah, fair point.
But we'll go into another time.
Cool. Okay, that is the end of section 1.
Ooh.
With all 2 questions of section 1.
I wasn't going to draw attention to that, but I...
Well, no, it makes you feel any better. There's only 1.5 questions in section 3.
Wow, I'm curious what the half is.
Well, it's the bonus points you can get.
Okay, there you go.
But after that first round, Dan and Phil, Joe both have a point, but Phil is yet to get off the starting grid.
Oh, Phil.
Ooh.
But moving on
The fall from the top.
to section 2.
Section number 2.
Section number 2, about a new Space Marine chapter. There's their own codex. Can you guess which one I'm referring to?
You know, I
Joe's-
work out every
Joe has
day.
buzzed in first.
Is it the Silver Templars?
Men are dirty, sir.
No,
Rifles are
no,
clean.
it's not the Templars. Phil, what are you going to guess?
Is it one of the black ones?
I'll give you a point for making a joke about the fact they're both black. Can you tell me which one specifically, though, which I'm referring? It's a 50-50 chance.
I'm going to say Iron Hands.
It's incorrect. It's not the Iron Hands.
Oh,
Dan, to which am I referring?
Raven Guard have their own supplement for the first time ever.
It is
So
the
it's
Raven
not-
Guard have the first
It's
supplement
not
for the
actually a
first time?
codex then. It's a codex supplement. Richie.
Well, regardless, it's the first time that's ever happened for the Raven Guard.
have Iron Hands had one before them?
Iron Hands did, yeah. They had what were they? Not the Sons of the Medusa. It was something like the Clan Ruku Rakabagabaga.
Rakukan, where is something? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, the Raven Guard were included in, I think, the Monkai supplement for the Tau fightiness that happened in 7th edition. Or maybe they weren't even included in that. But I think they were, because they did a kill team set with Raven Guard and Tau. But they definitely were in the Adeptus Astartes book as well, where they had all the new formations and detachments and things. But they've never had a standalone book. Until now, or the impending future.
Yes, it's the exciting news that the Raven Guard have their own new Codex supplement coming in next week when you're hearing this. It's available to pre-order from the day this podcast goes out, the weekend. So very exciting. And now this is the opportunity for the boys to start talking about what they think about Space Marines Raven Guard, and Phil to make a bold attempt at caring about Space Marines.
I mean, I hear you can purchase the Raven Guard Codex supplement for a fairly discounted rate at Triple Helix Games. Isn't that right, Joe?
That is correct. You can buy it at a whole 25% off.
My goodness, there you go. Shill.
That wasn't a great split. But I'm interested to see what the Raven Guard can do. Are we allowed to talk about this?
Imagine if we had some questions about some of the things they could do.
Ooh.
You've definitely not watched last week's quiz. So, never mind. Let's begin. So, for the benefit of Joe, the format of the quiz is we ask questions which enable you to talk about the rules that we're talking about.
Oh, now I understand.
Oh, now you understand.
Could you not have just listened to the last episode, Joe?
It's not like it was at the end. It was right at the beginning.
I don't have like 5 hours in my day to sit and listen to you guys talk. I have to sit and talk to you guys for 5.5 hours.
Joe, I love the fact that you can't even bring yourself to kind of promote the virtues of listening to this podcast on this podcast. It's amazing. It's
like doing it twice. I can understand doing it once. And
I have to do it many times, mate. I've got to edit the thing.
Yeah, but you love the sound of your own
mate,
voice.
all you do is turn up and speak. You contribute the least of everyone.
I'm the talent, mate.
All right, brilliant. There you go.
Joe's a talent. He's also, he's our alpha game player now.
True, yeah, sorry, I forget my place. Sorry, sir.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the Space Marines Raven Guard. Question 1 on them. One of their warlord traits is Shadow Master. But what does it do? First to buzz in was Dan.
You can't fire Overwatch at them.
It is correct. It's some filthy nonsense where you can't fire Overwatch at them.
Yay! It's like having Captain Smash.
Well, is it exactly the same? Just
it's not exactly the same because it's a warlord trait rather than a war gear option, and there are already. So I don't know if Space Marines had it as a warlord trait, but I know the Elder definitely did.
I'm going to say he's actually technically better than a Smash Captain.
Based off of a warlord trait.
At killing specific things. The problem is I don't know what Richie's questions are going to be. I don't want to spoil one of his questions.
Yeah. So let's not do that in case you go too far ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for clarifying the quiz format earlier.
That's all right.
It's always good to be reminded.
You said we get to talk about these things.
Well, but in the order we do them.
Jesus, this is complicated.
Maybe I should have put some of the other questions earlier. We reorganised. Yeah. Anyway, we're doing it in the order I have it written down here.
All right then.
Richie hasn't accounted for your variable yet, Joe. He wasn't used to having you around last time. There was an air of professionalism.
He wasn't ready for a tangent thrown in unnecessarily.
Okay, so that was the first warlord trait, Shadow Master. However, in Codex Space Marines, there was a different warlord trait available, called specifically for the Raven Guard, called Silent Stalker. What was the rules for that warlord trait? Joe's buzzed in first.
Oh, was it he? Is an additional -1 to shoot at him?
Nope, that's incorrect. Dan.
He gets an additional -1 to his AP when shooting at a selected thing.
That's incorrect.
Oh, wow, I made it up. I don't know.
Phil, would you want to have a go?
two options. I'm going to say he can target a character when he's shooting at them, even if it's not the closest.
Well, that's not the one we're looking for. So sorry to let you know that. The correct answer was he cannot be fired Overwatch upon.
That's the Raven Guard one, is it?
They're both the same.
Oh.
They're both the
You just
same.
said it was a different one.
I said it's differently. It's a different name. But it does the exact same thing.
Oh. Well, that's useful.
So slight lack of originality there.
Yeah.
But speaking of lacking of originality, question 3: what is the name of the Raven Guard chapter tactic, and what does it do? So there's a couple of points in there.
You know, I
Joe's buzzed in
work out
first.
every day.
It's like Sneaky Space Marines
Men are dirty, sir.
is the name of it.
Oh, yes,
I
Sneaky
can't-
Space Marines.
I can't give you a point for Sneaky Space Marines.
Basically, if you're in cover, you're -1 to be hit, but it only affects infantry and not dreadnoughts.
Correct so far.
And infantry, when in cover, -1. I don't know.
I'll give you 1 point because you got a bit of it. Next to buzzing was Phil. Can you get the rest of it?
So if you're infantry, you're -1 over 12. No, wait. You count as being in cover if you're over 12 inches away, and then if you're in cover, you're -1 to hit.
That's correct. That's correct. That's a point for you. Do you know the name for it?
Is it like in the shadows?
It's close, but it's not right.
Does close not count?
Dan? No, it doesn't. Dan's the last person to buzz in.
I mean, I'm only going to be able to even get close to guessing this name based on the fact that Phil was close. Shadow... No, Shadow Boy. No.
Shadow Boy.
Shadow Masters.
It is Shadow Masters.
No, it isn't. Is
It
it?
is
Hey!
Shadow Masters. And
Shadow Master. There you go. Boom.
if more of you done your homework, there was a bonus point for Games Workshop Leader for Thoros, because the Warlord trait is Shadow Master and the Doctrine is Shadow Masters. Because come on, guys, come up with some different words.
Are they both? Of course they are. Jesus.
Yeah, so come on, get some more words, boys.
They are really mastering those shadows. They've got
It's
them
almost-
well in check.
It's almost like they phoned in some of this one.
I can't believe it. Not the Raven Guard, not the most beloved.
No.
Never had a supplement before.
But that particular rule that was already in the Space Marines book, so their chapter tactic not super new, but still important for the quiz. But what is important is they have a new special combat doctrine rule.
Buzzer.
All right,
Well,
I've reset the buzzers.
there you go.
Can you tell me what is the name of their special combat doctrine?
You know, I work out every day.
I haven't finished
No, the
asking.
name.
I haven't finished asking the question, but Joe, do you want to go for this?
I don't know the name of it, but what it does is you get +1 to hit and wound against characters.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
I can't give you the point. It's not the full answer. Dan buzzed in second.
Is it Shadow Master?
It's not Shadow Master.
Dang it! Wouldn't that have been good?
I'm going to need to give you the. I've reset the buzzers. I'm going to need to give you the correct answer. So the question was, what is the name of their special combat doctrine rules, and what is that rule? Dan has buzzed in.
So is there a point for the name and a point for the what it does?
The point for the name and the point for the rule. And Joe was quite close, but he didn't get it right.
Okay. So the rule was something along the lines of it happens in the tactical doctrine stage. I'm pretty sure of that. And
I'll give you the point for that because that was what Joe was missing. It was only in the tactical doctrine.
Was that it? All right, fine. There you go. Done.
You shrewd.
And then in terms of what it's called Shadow
No,
Strikes.
It's not Shadow Strikes.
No,
Phil?
no, fine.
Phil, Joe, you want to buzz
You
and try and
know,
guess?
work out every day.
Is it Shadows?
Not Shadow.
Shadows with shadows on top.
Poetry Shadow.
No, the answer for those playing along at home was Surgical Strikes.
Oh.
I knew that. I just didn't want to say it.
Yeah, that's right. That's fair enough.
Well, there you go. It's good to
I
know,
said
Joe.
strikes, didn't I?
You said Shadow Strikes, and I can't give you that because
Oh,
that's not
fair
right.
enough. Oh, there you go.
Yes, that's the special combat doctrine rule for the Raven Guard is during the tactical doctrine, they get +1 to hit and wound when targeting characters. And how do you boys feel about this?
It's no Iron Hands.
Like I was going to say, it actually makes their Smash Captains better than the Blood Angels one now.
Why?
At killing things like knights.
Why?
Because they get +1 to hit as well versus that knight, which is a character, because all knights are characters. So he'll be hitting on 2s with his Thunder Hammer.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
There's almost more of an incentive now to make sure your knights aren't characters. Or at the very least, if you're going to have one, just make sure it's only one and not several.
But the thing is that these things are decided before the most tournaments run it, so that you select your pre-game stratagems when you write your list, and then you submit that with your list. So when you go to an event, people would have already decided these things. Whereas if you go to an event where you can decide at the table, you can just be like, "Oh, I'm not going to run any characters this time." It's the only real way around it.
They've got that. They've got that jump pack thingy as well, right? Where they can reroll charges.
I'm taking points away from you.
What?
Because you're answering. It's a question that hasn't come up yet.
No, I see. Sorry, this is in the thing.
You're ruining the quiz format.
I didn't mean to. I just thought we were talking about
too late.
stuff.
It's too late. You've lost a point.
I've lost a point.
I mean, you have the opportunity to get it back, but you've lost a point for it because you're getting ahead of the quiz.
No, I apologise.
We're talking about surgical strikes and how, while it appears to be a bit rubbish,
This is a weird, convoluted system. So we're allowed to talk about things, but there's some things we're
very
not allowed to
specific
talk about.
things.
But you won't tell us what those things we are allowed to talk about.
That's very true. Let's finish. We've got 3 questions left. We'll finish.
All right,
those,
let's finish it up.
and then you can speak freely.
Oh,
Is that okay?
that works for me, I suppose. Can I have my point back?
Okay, I'll give you your point back.
Yay! Look at that, the general.
No, you folded quite easily on that one.
You try hard, Phil. You leave that alone. I won't. Whenever the thing comes up about the thing that I said, I won't answer it. I'll give everyone a chance to say it before I do. There you go. That's
Okay, so far, thanks to the good chaps at Warhammer Community Unit, we don't know all of the relics, stratagems, and psychopowers, but we do have a little glimpse of what some of them are. For the first question, they have a new relic called the Raven's Fury. But what does it do?
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy,
Dan
would
has
you
buzzed
like
in.
some sausage?
Is it a bolt pistol that does 2 damage?
It isn't. No, this isn't a regular Space Marine.
Oh, what?
No, the Raven's Fury is not a bolt pistol that does 2 damage.
Ah, poo. Always
Joe-
tried one of them.
Work out every day.
Joe's buzzed in.
Is it a jump pack
It is a jump pack, but that's
that allows you to advance and charge?
It is. What else does it do?
Oh God, there's additionals.
I think this is the thing I was talking about earlier, Joe.
Oh. It adds to your distance when you advance and charge.
No, it does not do that.
Oh, I know.
Men are dirty, sir.
Phil,
It allows you to re-roll your charge dice.
it does you roll the charge dice. Can you, for the final point available, what else does it do?
To give you +1 attack.
It does not give you +1 attack.
Oh, I know.
I also
Nice.
know, but I'll give it a Joe.
Joe?
It basically, when you charge, you roll a dice, and on a 4+, a unit within an inch takes a mortal wound.
That's correct. Well done. That is the Raven's Fury. It is not a bolt pistol that does 2 damage, like Dan predicted. Although I think odds are pretty good that there will somewhere be a bolt pistol that does 2 damage
Yeah,
in that codex.
Always there.
There's always one of those.
Pistol 2 -3 2 damage. Ooh, baby.
That's target characters.
That's that relic that never leaves the armory. It just sits there gathering dust.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, with Raven Guard, it might be good if it can target characters.
Not really, when you've got a jump pack that allows you to advance charge, does mortal wounds, and can do something else that I wasn't really listening to.
I think, yeah.
So for the benefit of those listening at home, and Joe, he's already stopped listening, the Raven's Fury allows you to advance and charge in the same turn. You can re-roll the dice of that charge. Dice, not die, you have to re-roll both dice. And after you make a successful charge on a 4+, a unit within 1 inch can take 1 mortal wound. Which is pretty cool.
That's a lot of rules on one bit of kit.
It's a bit odd it's only 1 mortal wound. You'd normally expect something like that to have D3 mortal wounds.
Well, it looks like it's combining part of the... What's the stratagem that Space Marine jump packs can use?
Hammer of Wrath.
Hammer of Wrath, yeah, but passively on it at all times. Because normally you have to use a stratagem to get that to happen.
And is that just 1 mortal wound?
Oh, it's just 1.
No, right.
So you have to run a pretty big squad for it to be of any real use.
It's surprising as well, though, that it's... it's only on 1 model, isn't it? Because it's a relic. And also... You still need to roll a 4+ to make it happen, which is pretty underwhelming. You would have thought it would have been like a 2+ for 1 mortal wound.
But that's their general rule for most mortal wound things. It's like
except if they're elder.
Oh,
or Gargantuan Squigoth.
Yeah, or a Gargantuan Squigoth. Sorry, Phil, I cut you off. You were saying.
Just that kind of generic rule that seems to be across all codexes. If you have a stratagem that can do mortal wounds, it tends to be on a 4+ that it will happen.
Except if you're elder and you're firing wave shields and it's 2+ and it does D3 mortal wounds.
Well, that's because it's elder, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, because they're the best.
No.
But don't you lose something for that, though? You lose the...
Oh yeah, you lose the ability to soak up damage with it, yeah. Which is fair enough, I suppose.
Okay, we have 2 final questions in the Raven Guard section of the quiz. Question 1, well, not question 1, it's question not 1.
I reckon you're on 4 at least.
It's on 1, 2, 3, 4. It is 4.
There you go.
I'm not going to give you a point for that, though.
Oh, well, that's fair enough.
So far, we have had a glimpse of one unique stratagem for the Raven Guard. It is called False Flight, and it costs 2 CPs, but what does it do? Joe has buzzed in.
it allows you to fall out of combat and then shoot and charge.
That is correct.
Ooh.
I thought you wouldn't finish it. Is that you get to fall back? The unit can fall back, shoot, and charge.
That's very good.
It's a pretty tasty stratagem, actually. But it only gives them... It's a stratagem, isn't it? Or
yeah. It is a stratagem, so it's particularly good with like aggressors or inceptors. Well, inceptors can fall back anyway.
Yeah. It's good with actually if you're going to take some Vanguard vets potentially, they'd be quite good with that because they could fall back forwards over and then charge on into the back lines, couldn't they?
Oh yeah, it's pretty tasty.
Use their fly keyword just to, go wherever they want.
Which is pretty cool. Okay. Final question on the Raven Guard before I open up the floor, and you can say whatever you want without risking the rest of the quiz in the format which needs maybe a little work. We have seen one of the new psychic powers for the Raven Guard. And can you tell me? It's called Shadow Step. And it's Warp Charge 7. Joe's buzzed in.
It allows you to remove a unit from the table and then redeploy them on the table again at the end of the psychic phase or immediately, I can't remember, but 9 inches away from an enemy unit.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. I don't have the page in front of me. unlike other people with their computer screens.
It's good. It is. I mean, for shorthand, I wrote here it's da jump on one character. It was specific. Yeah, you can for Warp Charge 7, a model within 18 inches of the Psyker that can be removed from play and redeployed anywhere 9 inches away from enemy models.
Blimey, that's all right then.
Which is hilarious because you can be like, Dreadnought, go! It just fires him out of a giant cannon across the table.
With his mind.
Be a good combo with those new Chaplain Dreadnoughts we've just been talking about. With their listeners.
Does it allow you to teleport any unit, or does it have to specifically
has to be a
an
character.
infantry character? Oh, a character.
It's specifically a character.
Oh. So you can get one of those Land Raider Excelsiors. Send that at them.
Is that a character?
On the wording, does it has to be a Raven Guard unit, yeah?
Yeah.
Or does it say like a Astartes?
I'm pretty sure it's Raven Guard. They've gotten quite good at saying that now. But I can Google it quickly.
Yeah, it tends to be if there is a psychic power that relates to a specific chapter, that it states that specific chapter. I'm pretty sure of that.
That's right then.
So I imagine
one Raven Guard character.
Okay.
What were you thinking, Jay? What were you going to try and do?
Chuck Gilliman across.
No, because I was like, oh, would you, if it was like just Astartes, to double it up with the White Scars, because litanies happens at the start of the turn, so you can litanies your White Scars Chaplain Dreadnought, and then redeploy him, and with the stratagem, the psychic power, and like a warlord trait, he gets like +5 to his charge. But that can't happen, so all of that is moot.
It's true. Plus, also as well, you would be losing out on all the fun tactical doctrine stuff because you can't have multiple chapters and still get tactical doctrines. They all have to be the same chapter.
Fair enough. Well, I suppose you could chuck it on that Smash Captain.
Yeah, I mean that's
Send him
kind
over.
of the intent.
Look, he's done his job here. I will send him somewhere else.
May I have an opinion on the Raven Guard now?
You can say whatever you want without jeopardizing the quiz at this point. Please go ahead.
I believe that the Raven Guard are interesting but not exceptional. Of the 4 supplements that are in existence right now, I think these guys are probably going to... Well, not that they're actually in existence right now, but they will be soon. I think these guys are going to be bottom of the barrel in terms of the rankings.
Yeah, from what we've seen so far, we haven't got the full picture yet.
Careful about talking about the Iron Hands, though, Joe, because, you know...
I don't know, what is it? What we've seen so far about whatever they're called, the Birdmen.
Yeah,
Raven Guard.
Brian Blessed. They're only going to be good at fighting Imperium and Chaos, because both of those rely very heavily on character models. Although it might be a weird secret outlier in terms of dealing with other Space Marine armies, because the new Space Marine armies, like Ultramarines, for instance, rely so heavily on being one blob with lots of central characters. So if you're running a lot of eliminators and stuff like that, you can knock those characters out, and then a lot of their buffs just kind of disappear. But then, so yeah, they're good for that. And obviously, like I mentioned, they're going to be really good at dealing with things like Knights, both Chaos and Imperium. And then a lot of Chaos stuff relies on things like Demon Princes, like Ahriman, and like Disco Lords. So they'll be good. I think you'll see a lot of Raven Guard eliminators, but just running bog standard, not as the Las Fusils, because they can't target characters. Another good one would be 10-man. Is it the auto sniper bolt rifle, whatever it is they have?
Yeah.
10-man squads of those are going to be terrifying.
You mean the Stalker rifle, yeah?
The Stalker bolt rifle, yeah. 10-man squads of those are going to be horrific because they've got that stratagem that allows them to target characters. Those bolt rifles will be hitting on 2s turn 1, and re-rolling 1s, and then you'll be average wounding most things on 3s with a -3 bolt gun that does 2 damage. So
Pretty tidy.
yeah,
Is
but
it
then
-3 or -2 in the Devastating Doctrine? I think it's only still -1, isn't it? Or is it -2?
it's -2, 2 damage now.
Crikey.
Yes, it's -3 in the Devastator Doctrine.
Yeah.
Lordy.
So yeah, so if you point a 10-man squad at someone like, I don't know, like a Primaris captain, even Calgar's going to get a little bit of a headache against that.
I mean, a little bit's putting it mildly, right? He's going to be well dead.
Well, he's got a fairly decent save.
4 a bimbo, right?
Yeah.
And he halves the damage, actually, as well, so he'd only be taking 1 each.
Yeah.
So maybe not Calgar.
But
Tigerius, on the other hand...
Tigris look like a sack of duty.
Yeah.
As they say.
Can I also offer another little interesting insight? Maybe none of you noticed. The Raven Guard artwork. Did anyone notice anything weird about the new Raven Guard artwork when it came out? So the minute it dropped, I didn't actually mention
Was
this on the group.
it weird that from a distance or from a glance it could easily be Iron Hands?
No, it wasn't from a distance. It could easily be Iron Hand. So when I noticed it, I twigged it, and I was going to flag it to you boys, but I thought I'd bring it up on the podcast. What's weird about the new Raven Guard artwork?
It's their Terminators are a different mark of armor.
Well, that is true, yeah.
The Terminator is a different mark, and that captain is absolutely immense in his Terminator armor. So it kind of looks almost like a Primaris Terminator.
Well, what's interesting is this is the first piece of new artwork I think I've seen from GW in a long time for Space Marines that doesn't feature one Primaris Marine.
Well, that never occurred to me.
Yeah, if you go back and look at it, it's all old school Space Marines.
Maybe they didn't get the memo.
Well, this is the thing I was curious about. Maybe they've just had this piece of artwork on the side for like tens of years for when they once upon a time were going to do a Raven Guard book, and then they went, nah, but now they finally got around to it. And
It's also
It
quite
kind of looks like it.
oh, sorry, Phil?
I was going to say, it kind of looks like it fits in with their new sort of 8th edition style artwork. I mean, it might have been loitering around since 7th edition, but I don't know. It looks like it's pretty new in its style.
I found it quite interesting that this army of stealth masters, the one piece of artwork they release is for a bunch of mass murdering Terminators.
Well, maybe they've got rid of the stealthy vibe now. Now they've just gone for a let's kill them all.
I don't know if they're running, like, I suppose maybe they're saying, hey, 10-man unit of Thunderhammer Terminators looks quite interesting now with that +1 to hit and wound against big things.
You know, with the way their chapter tactic works as well. If you use prepared positions, I assume that means everyone gets the -1 at the start, right?
You count as being in cover, don't
So
you?
you would get the -1, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's good. Good. Not
Pretty
bad.
tasty.
Well, it's double bubble at that point, isn't it? Not only do you get the benefits of being in cover, which you would get otherwise because you would be outside of 12, but if you're up against an army that can close the distance pretty quickly, you still get that cover save. And you get the -1, because the -1 is not affected by the distance, it's just you have to be wholly within cover, right?
Ooh, I think it's both actually.
It's
I could be
both.
wrong.
It's if you are in cover and if it's your 12 inches away,
okay.
infantry and in cover.
Yeah.
I thought it was tiered in as much as, like, if you're outside of 12, you're in cover. If you're within cover, you're -1. But anyway, I've obviously got that wrong.
But you sort of almost need that now because, sort of as I was saying to you earlier today, like if you're up against a Space Marine army, that whole stratagem, your 2 CP stratagem to count as being in cover, is pretty pointless against a Space Marine army that's got lots of heavy weapons.
Yep.
Because everything's now -1. So it's like, it's almost like you have to take that stratagem just to not get murdered, even though it's sort of not really doing anything at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted Raven Guard to be super duper awesome, but I feel like, unfortunately, again, they've gone for a more kind of elite, combat-orientated army, which, again, 8th edition just doesn't really very well accommodate, and I think that's going to be the downfall of the Raven Guard, is that they're playing a different game to everyone else.
I think they're going to be like a secret outlier. Like they're on the face of it, they're not going to be good now. But once all the codexes have come out, I think that they might become a good counter to what the new codexes become. Do you remember when the Eldar Codex came out and everyone said it was terrible and the Games Workshop had basically ruined Eldar?
I do remember that, but they were fools. But anyway, yes.
But they were fools. So we could be the new fools.
It's possible.
I think they're quite interesting. To Joe's point, I think they could be like, there's something about them that doesn't make sense to me. Is that their doctrine is all about, well, the chapter tactic is about stay far away and you get cover and you can't be hit. But then when they've given us like the relics and their warlord traits and stuff, it's all about close combat.
I think
so. It doesn't quite it doesn't feel right at the minute. It feels like an odd mishmash. That maybe in the codex it makes more sense, and there's some cool stuff in there.
As I said, their army is all about, I think with them especially, their army is going to be all about balance. It's all going to be about the balance of having those units at the back pelting people away, but you're going to need those distraction units taking up people's time and effort to kill. So you're going to have your Smash Captain flying up there. You're going to have like a big squad of Vanguard vets and maybe a unit of Terminators, which your opponent has to deal with, which means that your Eliminators in the backfield, your Scout Snipers and stuff like that are going to be fairly unmolested.
I sort of think their army style is probably... They're designed to stay alive longer while they're closing the distance. So the whole counting as being in cover or being -1 to hits is really only meant to last like a turn or two until you can sort of get in combat and smash them up with some other stuff. Or like Joe said, a bit of both. So you've always got stuff that's going to be getting that cover save.
Yeah, I think they're going to be like the Marine Nuance army.
Which, as a result, means that they are the worst of the 4 so far.
Yeah.
I think they did definitely suffer from coming after the Iron Hands.
Well, at the same time, yeah. I mean, I assume, are we going to do an Iron Hands related
Speaking of the Iron Hands...
Here we go.
First, let's look at the scores.
Ooh.
After round 2, in 3rd place is Phil with 3 points.
Well done, Phil.
In 2nd place is Dan with 5.
Well done, Dan.
In 1st place is Joe with 6.
Yes! Winner, winner.
I
But
demand
still-
a recount.
Still all to play for as we enter round 3. And as I said, speaking of the Iron Hands, round 3 is the Psychic Awakening round.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we've been tricked.
So we're gonna, as what will likely be a regular feature as we get into the Psychic Awakening, or is it really the End Times section? There's a small bit of news about the Psychic Awakening. I mean, they have a new website, which is all very la-di-da. But most importantly, what was new about it? Well, there was some news as a model has been teased as coming out soon, and it's the first model of its type that's going to be in plastic for the very first time. Can you tell me which model is it?
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Unsurprisingly, Dan buzzed in first.
What?
That would be the plastic Aspect Warriors known as the Howling Banshees. Specifically, the Howling Banshee Exarch was shown in the latest update because the earlier Howling Banshee was shown at the Nova reveal, but the Psychic Awakened one had a Exarch.
It was correct. It was a Howling Banshee Exarch. It's coming and it's going to be in plastic. And for some bonus points, can anyone tell me what was unique about this model for the
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some
unsurprisingly again, it was Dan.
What? I didn't even let him finish. I pressed the button. This is all very one-sided here, Richie. There's favouritism going on.
It's how it shows up. How it shows up in the app. So Dan, what was and there's potentially 2 points, maybe one, because one of these things I thought was new and never seen before, but it might not be.
Well, so for the first time in the history of Exarchs or Howling Banshees, there is now a helmetless version of the Howling Banshee, and this has been done specifically to depict the Yanari variant of the Elder faith, if we will. So Craftworld Elder are known for having fled from all of the debauched activities of their doomed kin, and then the Yanari are essentially the new kind of weird wibbly version of what has come out of this newfound religion worshipping the Ynyad, or the god of death. So now you get a weird kind of halfway house between the sort of functional and very kind of drab styles of the Craftworld Aspect Warriors, mixed in with some over-the-top but not really quite enough flair of the Yanari, which are a little bit more akin to the old school way of Elder life. Plus, as everyone says on the internet, it looks like a dude, which is neither a negative or positive thing. It's just a thing people say on the internet, and I'm trying to cover all my bases, and guess what? Rich might have thought the right answer was...
You talked a lot, but...
Can we give Dan -1 point for having the longest answer ever?
I'm tempted to give him -1 point because we have precedent. This is the same thing last week when he went on and on and on, didn't actually make any extra points, but he did start with the correct answer, which was that it has no help. It is helmetless for the first time. There's also one other thing that I think is actually quite never been seen before, but I haven't heard anyone else say it, so it might not be. But next up was Joe.
Well, he said exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, Phil.
Is it the different weapon options that it can come with?
I'm going to give you the point because that's what I thought. Because I've never seen a dual-wielding swords Howling Banshee before.
No,
I know. Take it back. There might be one, but I had not seen that before.
There very much is one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Mirror Blades and the Executioner have always been the two weapon options for the Howling Banshee Exarch since 2006, 2007.
So take that point off, Phil.
No, I'm gonna give him that point because, like him, it doesn't play cheaty Elder.
No,
so we didn't know any better.
No, you don't get extra points for not knowing something about a.
Well, no.
But,
Richie is the quizmaster, and he got
the whole
Richie's
point of
question
this
right.
quiz.
Yeah.
I could accurately predict what Richard was thinking the answer was, even if that answer was incorrect, which should really be a double point.
It's not a double point.
Don't push your luck.
I'm letting you keep your point, and I won't take one away from Joe for questioning the quizmaster.
Oh, in your box, Joe.
Okay, that was a fun Psychic Awakening round. Stay tuned for
Was it?
Next. What? Are you enjoying the quiz, Joe? Are you enjoying the new format?
I don't like losing points.
Oh, well, you haven't lost any points yet.
No, but I'm losing points to other people for freebies, apparently.
Well, before we went into that round, Joe was in the lead. However, the scores now are: in third place is Phil with 4. In second place is Joe with 6. But in the lead, the cheatiest of the cheaty Eldar himself is Dan with 7.
Yeah, me.
No, I'll give you some applause, Dan.
Oh, thanks, man.
There you go. I care.
Thanks, man. It feels warm and fuzzy.
But yeah, Psychic Awakening quite early. Nothing still new so far, really, other than a couple of plastic models. Be interesting to see what comes next.
Do we think it's a little... I don't know. Like, for me, Psychic Awakening, the trailer was nice. But it's been a bit disappointing, only because they haven't really said what it is beyond it's a campaign. Is it like a book? Is it like, is it multiple books? Is it a website where it's like a global campaign type thing? It's like they just keep teasing stuff, but not actually telling us what it is. What is the Psychic Awakening? What does it mean? It's too much teasing for me at the moment.
It's like Gabbo is coming. But You never
And
find
what's
out.
that?
Yeah, what does that mean, Joe?
Like in The Simpsons with Gabbo.
Oh, yes.
And everyone's like, Gabbo's coming! And everyone gets really angry because no one ever explains to them what Gabbo is. And then it just turns out to be this creepy little ventriloquist doll.
Yes. I thought you were going to do a rendition of tease me, tease me, baby, till I lose control. But you didn't. So there it was.
No, I'm not sultry enough to do it. To do that.
Can I just say, as I was saying already, this Banshee Exarch is rather nice, but I don't like the Inari variant of it because it's too much of a halfway house. It's like you need like the weird Baroque stylings of the Vizarch as opposed to this. I don't know what this is, but it's not Inari enough to me.
Do you reckon she loses the Banshee mask rule?
No, because she's still got the Banshee mask elements, the screamy bits on the side.
Okay, I'll let that off then.
That was going to be my bonus question was which version is best to be charged by, and it's the Inari version because it doesn't have a Banshee mask.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, they both have Banshee masks. To be fair, that new helmetless one is a really, really good option potentially for Autarch conversions, assuming that you can still use Banshee masks on Autarchs in the next few months when indexes don't become a thing.
Well, that'll be after the Psychic Awakening and the end times begins, and we enter the Age of Gilliman.
And 9th edition.
Okay, so that was the end of round 3. We're moving to our final round, round 4. Today, when you're hearing this, if you're listening to it on the day it comes out, there are 2 new Space Marine Codex supplements released. Which one of them are we going to talk about now?
Men are dirty, sir.
Oh, Phil,
Rifles are clean.
possibly the easiest question in the quiz. Phil, what's the answer?
Is it Iron Hands?
It is Iron Hands. Well done.
What the heck? He's not getting a point for that. Surely.
We had the same question earlier. It was 50-50.
Questioning the quizmaster a second time after you were warned that you were going to lose a point if it happened again, Joe.
Shut up, Phil.
Okay.
I was in the middle of drinking some water as the question came in. I realised sort of mid-gulp it was a question. I was like, oh God, what do I do? It just didn't work out.
I mean, in Phil's defence, he got the question wrong last time.
It's true.
But he got it right this time. When it was a 1 in 1 chance of him getting it right, he nailed it. To be fair, though, Joe, when you had a 50-50 chance, you got it completely wrong.
You just said you
didn't even say the Iron Hands or the Raven Guard. You just said
I know because
something different.
the Silver Templars got their codex through conquest, didn't they?
Never you mind.
That reminds me, I have a bonus point. I have another question here. Speaking of conquest, thank you for that segue, Joe. Quick segue. Which country can you now? Oh, first buzz was Dan.
Is it Italy?
It is not Italy.
Oh, I thought it was Italy. It's not Italy.
Rifles are clean.
Phil.
It's France.
It is
But
France.
Italy, I think they did about a month ago, maybe.
Oh, is there a new? Have they done France now as well? Have they?
Yep, they announced this week that you can now get conquest in France.
Oh, that's good.
So for all our French listeners out there, you too can keep an eye out for when those models you want are available cheap.
Exactly. I may or may not have bought 6 copies of the Landspeeder issue the other day. I have a
They're
problem.
going to be super good in Iron Hands now.
Wow, let's not spoil it.
Well, speaking of Iron Hands, and we'll do to avoid what happened on the Raven Guard, we'll do all the questions now, and then we can do the 3D talking. Okay, question number 1. What is the name of their chapter tactic, and what does it do?
Is this another two-parter?
Well, yes, because it's a big question, Joe. But you haven't buzzed in. Dan has. So Dan, would you like to take the question?
So the chapter tactic is, I believe, the flesh is weak. And it gives all of the models feel no pain, or rather ignore wounds on a 6+. And for vehicles, it gives them double the quantity of wounds that they have for the purposes of determining their profile for, moving and shooting and things. And then lastly, they get to Overwatch on 5s.
That is all correct. That's a whole bunch of points for you.
Yay!
We would have also accepted what doesn't it do as an option. Okay. Moving on from their chapter tactic, which is rather tasty, one must say.
Did I get the name right as well?
You did it. It's the Flesh is Weak.
Crikey. There you go. I'm on point.
Which could be easily mistaken for a chaos rule, but it's not. Okay, moving on to their special combat doctrine. Can anyone tell me the name of that special rule and what does it do?
Men are dirty, sir.
Phil has buzzed in unexpectedly.
Well, this is one I've been actively remembering all day because I was sure it was going to come up as a question because I didn't really care too much about the Raven Guard stuff. So this is Calculated Fury, and it is when your Devastator Doctrine is active, you ignore the penalty for moving and shooting with heavy weapons, and you also get to reroll hit rolls of 1.
We all hit rolls of 1 with what?
Heavy weapons.
That's all correct.
Yes.
Good work, Phil. Good work. I wouldn't have remembered the name, but I knew the rule.
It's a pretty tasty rule, and Phil, I expected you might know it because Dan and I have been going on about it on the group chat for ages.
We've all been going on about just how good it is, but let's save that for the discussion.
Yes. Okay. From the rest of the stuff, they have a new warlord trait that's been teased to us via the good chaps at Warhammer community, and the warlord trait is called Student of History. But what is the special rule?
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like
Dan has buzzed in.
sausages?
This, oh no, God, that's the oh, hang on.
No, I'm sorry. No, sorry. You're not doing this again.
Yeah.
You do this too often, Dan. Someone else. Phil or Joe?
Men are dirty,
Phil's buzzed
sir.
in.
Is this the one where you can consolidate 6 inches instead of 3?
You're mostly there. What specifically can you do about with that 6-inch consolidation?
Heroic Intervention.
I can't give it to you.
Is it both heroic intervene and consolidate?
You're nearly.
Or
there.
is it consolidate and
No,
palm?
it's no.
I don't even remember this. They've got a 6-inch move, have they? Well, I suppose we'll find out. Joe, what do you say?
Do you want to go on?
You know,
You'll get the point and Phil won't.
You get when you consolidate after combat, you get to move 6 inches towards the nearest enemy unit instead of 3.
I'm going to give it to Phil. The answer was you can consolidate 6 inches rather than 3, but most specifically in any direction.
Ooh, I didn't even
that's
know they
pretty
had
clever.
that.
It's a little. It's not. I don't know if I've seen it anywhere else. It might be somewhere, but yeah, you can consolidate in any direction rather than towards the nearest enemy.
You sure you're not taking down some notes from the Raven Guard accidentally?
Nope. Apparently, it's something to do with how their chapter master died or something.
Oh, okay.
I think some kind of reference in there.
They don't want to get too close to those pointy swords.
Yeah, so I guess I want to consolidate backwards in defence rather than forwards.
Mm.
What else we got here? They have another warlord trait we know of, and this is in Codex Space Marines already.
Are you going to reset the buzzers for this one?
Okay, yeah, I might, yeah.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Just saying.
Thank you for letting me know.
It's alright.
Yeah. So, in the Codex Space Marines book, the Iron Hands had another warlord trait called Merciless Logic. What did that do?
you know,
Joe's buzzed in.
I what it says when you charge, you get +1 attack in combat.
That's incorrect.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Joe's going to give it a go. No, Joe's already have a go. Dan's going to give it a go.
They get to get an additional -1 in combat.
It's incorrect.
Okay.
Phil, you want to give it a go?
Men are dirty, sir.
That's the subject. To get to
Are clean.
reroll 1s at some point. I don't know.
I mean, if you give it to a captain, sure, he will get to that, but no, the correct answer is, and none of you got it, is all 6+ to hit procs an additional, the ability to take an additional attack.
It's alright, isn't it?
Which isn't bad at all.
It's alright.
Okay, moving on. Next question. Moving on to their relics. There was a new relic revealed called the Iron Stone.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Okay, Dan's buzz first.
So it's that so you put it on a character, that character has a 3-inch bubble, and then vehicles within 3-inch of that bubble that have the Iron Hands keyword, obviously, they reduce the damage of weapons that hit them and wound them, and you fail the armor save of, by 1 to a minimum of 1. So a weapon that does 3 damage would then do 2, or a weapon that did 2 damage would then do 1. That's the rule.
It's a very wordy, thorough way of giving it, but you're still only going to get the 1 point.
Well, no, that's fair enough. I just wanted to make sure, because I know how much of a stickler you are for the very
That's true, I
specific
can
things.
be a stickler for it. But
You'd
yeah,
be
that is
like, no,
correct.
what is it? It's not. What do you put it on, Dan? Oh, so there you go.
Yes, that is correct. The Iron Stone you can play is a relic for a character, obviously, which vehicles within 3 inches of that model take -1 to damage received to a minimum of 1.
Boom.
Next up, there's a psychic power, which is interesting because the Iron Hand psychic power is all very machine-based. And their first one that we've seen is called Blessing of the Machine God. And it has a warp charge of 5. But can you tell me, after I reset the buzzers, can you tell me what it does? No guesses, no one? Dan's going to give it a go.
Daddy, would you like some
Increases
sausage?
your feel no pain to 5 rather than 6.
Men are dirty, sir.
Incorrect.
No,
Phil?
Rifles are clean.
This one which gives you +1 to hits.
I'm going to need you to be slightly more specific.
He's on
So
it.
you target I'm guessing a unit within 18 inches, and you give them +1 to hits for that phase. Well, not for that phase, until I guess the next turn for shooting,
work out
something
every
like
day.
that.
It's
And then it
clo-
also
It's close, but it's not quite right. Joe has the ability to steal.
You select a unit in visible line of sight of the sorcerer, and
Sorcerer?
Sorcerer, no, that's not it.
playing Age of Sigma.
the librarian, and then one unit within 6 inches of him gets +1 to hit for that turn.
There's definitely something about Titanic in there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
I'm not sure who to give the point to because none of you really got it. I'll give one to all of you because you're all kind of there. Which means no one gets. Which basically means no one.
Wait, Dan was nowhere near it. What you?
Well,
What are you
that-
talking about?
yeah,
I was
no,
very
no, well,
close.
It was so the full rule, and the reason why I'm going to give you both a point, is because it's +1 to hit. You pick a vehicle within 12 inches of the psyker, and they get +1 to hit.
Yeah, see, that's precisely what I said, Phil. What are you on about?
But you didn't put a range on it. You said the wrong range. Dan's also going to get a point because there is a nuance, which is that it's only for regular vehicles. It's warp charge 8 to affect a Titanic vehicle.
To be clear, Rich, I am winding you up there. I said that you changes your feel no pain to 5 rather than 6. So I think you're being very kind to me by forgetting that I said that.
Well, that's true. Well, that's not why you. Well, I might have to take a point off you now.
Well,
Trying to cheat.
Yeah, well,
But you-
I mean,
I would have said the Titanic bit, but you cut me off and went straight to Joe.
oh, is that what it
Chance to
is?
say it. It was. It's fine.
Well, for you two faffing about, I'm going to give Joe a point.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
There. Joe's learned some good respect there.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, he's still there. I was worried if Joe wasn't there anymore.
Right, yeah.
No, I'm still here. If I'm totally honest, I didn't actually read the Iron Hands one. I just let the internet tell me what it was. And then I just kind of copied what Phil said.
Joe doesn't even have time to read articles on Warhammer Community anymore. He's so important. Such a
So
big
big.
Okay.
But you guys, I woke up this morning to something like 58 messages on Facebook chat. Other chats are available, and just you guys talking about Iron Hands lists. I was like, oh, I don't need to read this article now because I'll get everything from these boys.
There you go.
That's true. And did you go to Fordrod and order a ton of Contemptor Dreadnought pieces based off that chat?
No, because the Contemptor Dreadnought isn't the real winner out of this.
Well, let's not talk about it
Well-
until Richie confirms we've definitely got no more questions.
There's one question remaining.
Oh.
And there is up to 3 points available for it, so all to play for.
Oh.
So a new character, special character, has been revealed for the Iron Hands for the first time. There's special character with a model. And can you tell me? So the character has a name, but also 2 titles. Can you tell me? So there's 3 points up for grabs for those.
You know,
Joe's buzzed in.
His Iron Father Iron Face.
Okay, so you're going for Iron Father McIron Face,
Yep.
and the other 2.
What were the other 2 names?
There's three names up for grabs, Joe. Are you,
Oh,
are you
yeah.
just giving?
Three names.
He has 1 name and 2
Men are dirty,
titles.
sir.
Are
Clean.
Master of the Gorgons / Medusa.
That's incorrect. One of yours is right. He is called the Iron Father. So that was one of his titles. He has 1 title and he has a name. Next to
So do I
Buzzy,
get a point?
you got a point. Yes.
Boom.
Phil.
I was just going to say Tech Priest for one of the titles.
No, he is not a tech priest because he's not in the whatever the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Oh, what they call
Well,
it?
technically, they get to spend time with the Adeptus Mechanicus before.
Would you like some sausage?
Oh,
Dan has buzzed in.
Is he a master of the forge?
He is a master of the forge. But do you know his name?
No. No idea. Ferris? Ferris. Is it Ferris?
You know what? I'm gonna give you a point
Really?
because his name is Malkarn Theos.
Alright, fine, I'll do ya.
That's not Ferris.
If you're gonna take a punt in the dark, I'm gonna give you that.
I mean, that's the
He
name
just,
of it.
he just said the name of his chapter master.
Well, it's
Oh.
Primarch. It's Primarch.
Fine.
Well, I mean, I can take the point off him. It's not actually gonna make a
I
difference.
don't
to the
think.
score.
Well, I don't think Ferris was necessarily. Well, I mean, we've heard the name now. No one else has a chance to guess, so it's
Yeah.
what it is.
But that's the final results of the quiz.
Was there no question about the special Maelstrom stratagem?
Oh no, because
I was expecting that to
nobody
be a
cares
bonus.
about that. No one cares about that one, Phil.
Is
I
it
mean,
a
that's a
master
pretty
stratagem?
cool
Yeah,
one.
I thought it was very bold of Games Workshop to think that anybody cares about. I mean, I'm speaking for oneself. I think it was very bold to think that anyone would care about a Maelstrom of War stratagem when you dropped all this competitive nonsense into it.
I didn't read it. What does it do?
It allows you to basically keep an objective that you've already done, and it can stay active for the following turn. So basically, you can score one objective twice if you think it's one that you can easily achieve.
Well, it's cool. Like,
2 CP though.
And who gets that? Is the Raven Guard get that, or the?
No, Iron Hands.
Oh, that's really good for the Iron Hands.
Yeah,
That would
quite a
be
lot of
fine.
people still do Maelstrom.
so if you pull Kingslayer, and you've killed their warlord, that's a really good one.
Yeah, you also score that one. Or if you're on an objective that you know that you're going to comfortably hold.
Or
Yeah.
Supremacy is quite easy to do, and it's worth quite a lot of points. Because it's only holding 3 objectives, isn't it? Supremacy, which is
Yeah.
relatively achievable. The ETC guys will probably lap that up, right? I mean, that's an extra boost to them.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's actually, to be fair, if you actually look at it through the perspective of an ETC style player that uses Maelstrom cards, that's actually pretty damn good.
So we can expect lots of ETC Maelstrom players to buy multiple packs of Iron Hands cards, not to stack the deck in any way.
Mate, I tell you, Iron Hands, they've got some creativity available to them because they neutralise a number of the negatives that affect a lot of the otherwise potentially viable Space Marine stuff. Me and Rich have been talking about this. I quite like land speeders in Iron Hand's flavour, although Rich is convinced that my enthusiasm for the land speeder isn't necessarily as well placed as maybe it should be. But nonetheless, think Iron Hands land speeders can be pretty interesting.
The Iron Hands make Redemptors really good now. It's the one reason why people don't take Redemptors is because it can't move and shoot.
Yeah.
And that's going to be
I
able
think-
to move and shoot.
The big winners are everything that has heavy weapons and doesn't have the machine spirit rule.
Yeah. The Leviathan, for example. Whew.
So good.
Leviathan.
But
with
the
two
good thing about
cannons.
the Redemptor, because do you get an additional -1 on top, so that the heavy weapons are technically -2
For what, the Leviathan or the...
for the Iron Hands?
Yeah, for the Iron Hands, so you still get the -1 for the Devastator Doctrine.
So and the additional. So in the Devastator Doctrine, a Redemptor Dreadnoughts
-2.
Gatling cannons are now -3.
I thought they were
No,
-2
no,
Gatling
no.
cannons.
It-
Or
it-
-1,
no, it's-
rather.
You just get -1. So the Iron Hands rules are that they can move and shoot with heavy weapons for no penalty, and they get to reroll 1s.
Yeah. So.
But they're
there's
still in the tactical. They're still in the Devastator Doctrine, so they still get the effects of the Dev Doctrine, don't they?
Yeah, because they get to add -1, but only one -1. Because specifically for a bonus point, can anyone tell me why that would be the case?
Why they'd only get one additional -1?
Yeah. I mean, outside of the fact because they don't. Why can't they? Why couldn't that be possible?
I'm confused now. So what's the question?
So Joe was thinking you could get -1 AP twice from the doctrines.
Oh no! You definitely can't do that.
Why couldn't you do that?
Well, because the Space Marine Tactical Doctrine of Devastation is -1 with heavy weapons and some other type of weapon, but it's predominantly heavy weapons, and this just adds extra rules on top, but not the -1, which is already in play.
Well, yeah. That's in this specific instance. But there's also a reason why that even if there was a rule that did that, it wouldn't work.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because you guys might not get it. It's because unless explicitly stated, the additional AP minuses you get through the combat doctrines, don't stack with any.
Oh.
That's explicitly in the rules that they don't stack.
Ah. Fair enough.
But still, it still means that the Redemptor Dreadnoughts, the Gatling cannons are -2.
Yeah.
It gets to move and shoot, so it's hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that it's got, 13 wounds, and you're going to have to drop
14.
it down.
Oh, no,
14.
14.
13 wounds. And you're going to have to drop it down to 3 before any real negatives start happening.
And it's got 6 up, feel no pain.
And it's got a 6 I feel no pain.
And you're going to have a lieutenant within 3 inches of it with the -1 to damage buff. The old stone of whatever it was.
Yeah. So, and they're way cheaper than Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Way cheaper.
How much is a Contemptor Dreadnought?
170 points?
Oh, wow. Okay, fair enough, yeah.
Maybe 180?
No, they're not. They're cheaper than that now. Depends on what you give them.
Well, you're going to give it the Carey's assault cannon. Because you won't give it the melter thing, because that's poo.
Well, you say that, a -5 melter gun. Woo!
It's a bit over the top, isn't it?
But hits on 2s, re-rolling 1s.
Yeah, but it's only one shot. And if you
Well,
shoot...
what a
and
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you're hitting
it's
on
one
2s,
shot
re-rolling 1s.
that can a maximum do 6 damage.
I mean, I'm
Is it-
struggling to see the downside.
So the Contemptors are now 132.
Are you talking about the ones that come in the Codex or the Forge-Rolled ones? Which are the good ones?
The Codex ones.
So the Relic Contemptor is more expensive.
Yeah, but the standard Contemptor's only got 10 wounds, isn't it?
Yeah, 10 wounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why it's 132 points.
And let's have
And it has
a
a ballistic skill of 2+. And it has a 5-up invuln. And it has feel no pain.
and it has feel no pain.
Well, we'll live in
Yeah.
Iron Hands here.
Yes, I mean you're not going to want to use a Relic Contemptor as Iron Hands because you're paying in the points for the 6-up feel no pain. Which you get the extra wounds, but you're paying points for rules you don't get.
Yeah.
That's true.
Regular Contemptors They're pretty tasty in iron hands. Although again, I still think whirlwinds are redonkulous because you get the whole indirect fire. You either do the 2d6 variant or the 2d3 variant. If you do the 2d6 one, obviously you get lots and lots of very, very viable anti-horde shots. And if you do the 2d3 variant, you can deal with other sort of bedded in mortar teams, but also harass intercessor marines and other things because they do 2 damage, which is pretty tasty at -2. So yeah.
What I discovered yesterday, which I didn't realise, is that thunderfire cannons hit on 2s.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say Thunderfire cannons are a bit more tasty because they hit on 2s and they reroll 1s.
And those tremor shells are no joke.
Yeah, because they half your movement and your charge distances as well, don't they?
Yeah, so it completely ruins a horde army's goals at all. And if you come up against a Gene Stealer cult player, so one of our friends who runs the Gene Stealer blob with a Brood Lord that can basically move a advance. You roll 3 dice for the advance and pick the highest, so it's going to be 6. And then you double move and you can charge on top. That completely slows that whole thing down massively.
Yeah. Tap that with a tremor shell, it's not going to have much of a fun time, is it?
Oh god, no. And Gene Stealers die pretty easy once you start shooting anything at them.
We also consider that you can take the Primaris Marines with Stalker bolt rifles, which means, okay, fair enough, they're only getting 1 shot each, but 1 shot at 36-inch range, re-rolling ones to hit, -3 2 damage. It's not. It's pretty scary, right?
Oh god, yeah.
And they can move and shoot now.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, it's so easy to fill a Space Marine army up with the Devi Doctrine stuff. If at some point they're mad and re-release or come up with some new rules for the Land Raider Excelsior from Warhammer World, that could also be pretty crazy because that's a character that could, in theory, take on the Iron Hands keyword, and it's also a vehicle, so you could do the whole thing of giving that the bubble where you get the feel no pain stuff, or not feel no pain, but you get the -1 to damage on that massive Land Raider. That could be all sorts of fun. But
what's the special character who can go in a tank? Is that he just for?
He's just
in the Ultramarines? He wasn't in the generic codex then.
Yeah, so he's Sergeant Kronos of the Ultramarines, and the other issue is that Sergeant Kronos is a special character, therefore you couldn't give him a relic anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think the biggest winner. Dan and I've talked a lot about this. I'm a big fan of the Contemptor Mortis Dreadnought in general. But I think the real big winner is the Stormhawk Interceptor.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. That one's
because
now.
That bad boy now is ridiculous. Because for those who aren't familiar with him, he's usually you take as an anti-flyer flyer if you don't want to go to Forge Rod and buy the Zyphon. But it's armed for 200 points or 201 points. It's armed with 2 assault cannons, a Las Talon, and a Typhoon missile launcher, which normally would be hitting on 3s, but -1 for moving, so it's hitting on 4s. But now that's not a thing. So now it's hitting on 3s, and it's got +1 to hit flyers. So it's hitting on flyers on 2s, maybe 3s if you've got the -1.
Yeah. And
you're re-rolling 1s, but equally it means you're hitting ground targets on 3 with re-roll 1s. And unlike other flyers, you can re-roll saves of 1, and it's got the feel no pain with it. So that Stormhawk Interceptor as Iron Hands is ridiculous, and I think that's the true gem in the arsenal for them.
Is it flyers or is it units with the fly keyword?
Fly
units
keyword.
With fly keyword. Sorry, yes.
So that is actually quite tasty then, because then you're going to be up close to Eldar with that thing, which means that you're going to be hitting Wave Serpents on 2s then.
Yeah, people often look at the other one, the Storm Talon gunship, because it's got strafing run, which is equally pretty good because it's got a twin assault cannon hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. But the guns on the Interceptor. This has got more guns and it can do more damage. I think it's really, really good.
Well, they with the strafing run, they get +1 to hit, which means that they'd always be hitting on 3s, which means that they'd be back to hitting on 2s, but everything on the floor.
Yep.
Well, unless it's got the fly keyword.
Unless it's got the fly keyword, yeah.
Okay.
But then you could also, because the weird thing is with the Storm Talon, is you could arm it with the assault cannons and the Skyhammer missiles, and the Skyhammer missiles have +1 to hit things with fly.
Oh, so then it's like a double purpose.
Yeah, you could build something that's a bit more multi-purpose, but as we know, usually in tournament play, that's normally not that good.
No.
But still,
No, I don't think you need to do the. You don't need to do the Skyhammer missiles against with the when you don't have the -1 to hit with the moving.
Oh, I totally agree. Just
Because you can just give it the regular Typhoon missiles, which is just basically two crack missiles,
which
are still hitting flyers on 3s, re-rolling 1s.
Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic.
Do you reckon we're going to see the return of the bike Smash Captain of 7th edition?
What you mean in Iron Hands or in White Scars?
In Iron Hands.
Unlikely, because I think the problem is with the Iron Hands is the captain has become relatively redundant, because most people will build their army around the notion of the fact they're staying in the Devastator Doctrine with re-rolling 1s with the heavy weapons, and then they're just going to be taking lieutenants to give themselves the re-roll wounds.
Or Tech Marines to patch up their vehicles.
Yeah, Tech Marines to patch up their vehicles. But I don't think we'll see too many captains in Iron Hands.
No.
Because if you're building an Iron Hands army, you're not, in a competitive mindset, you're not taking, rapid fire or assault or any other type of weapon type. You're just kitting everyone out with heavy weapons and going at it.
What about Centurions?
Wasted? No, they're wasted.
Yeah, because they also gain the benefits of. They all already had that. Although they get to natively reroll 1s, which is a supposedly good thing, but
only with the heavy bolters though, not with because the Hurricane bolters don't get the reroll 1s.
True, Hurricane bolters don't. But if you took them with the missile launchers and las cannons, I suppose. But again, that's a lot of points. You're not going to want to do that.
No. I don't think that's a good idea. I think Centurions are best as Imperial Fists.
Devi squad.
What are the aggressors like? Are they rapid fire or are they
assaults? So again,
assault. Okay.
Yeah. Suppressors though. Suppressors. They got good, because suppressors had the weird thing where they were both fast and heavy weaponry, but now obviously they don't suffer the minus for moving and shooting with those big autocannons, so they've gotten really tasty now.
And they're minus two damage. So first turn, they're actually. I personally think that suppressors are better than Hellblasters. Because they don't have to overheat like the Hellblaster does. You don't run that risk of killing yourself.
And it's a longer range than a Hellblaster as well.
Yeah.
And they're higher toughness, aren't they? Toughness 5?
No, they're only toughness 4 because they're just basic Marines with jump packs, basically.
Did anyone check if their wounds got increased when they put them in the Codex?
No, they're still just 2 wounds.
Okay.
Because they're just like standard Intercessor style armor. It's only the Gravis stuff that got 3+. Sorry, got 3 wounds.
But it's only 90 points for free. It's a pretty
incredible.
Cheap fast attack slot in terms of filling out a detachment.
Did we mention the Eliminators? I think they've got a good shout now, especially with the last few. Either variant.
Yeah. No, there's so many amazing units with heavy weapons in the Space Marine army that have now just been unlocked. It's like when everyone got hyped about the idea that the Havocs from Chaos Space Marines got ignore moving and ignoring the negative penalties for moving and shooting. The entire Space Marine army has had that unlocked. So essentially, imagine how amazing it was when we realised that Havocs could move and shoot with no penalty. Now everything in Space Marines can. It's crazy. It's so good. And they got Feel No Pain. And they Overwatch on 5s. And their vehicles don't suffer the penalties until they hit the point.
Yeah, I'm very surprised it hasn't been nerf hammered already, because it feels like it should. It feels like they've got one. It just feels like they've got one rule too many.
Well, I
More like
I
four
feel
rules too
like
many.
I feel like GW have shot themselves in the foot with the whole doctrines thing, because the Devastator doctrine has to come first. You can't opt out of it, and it's the best out of all of them. Even Ultramarines, whose whole army is based around assault, will stay in the Devastator doctrine and then spend one command point a turn to put one unit in the assault doctrine. So even they don't even leave the Devastator, and it's just going to be crazy now, I think.
It sort of feels like they should have made it so you've got those three doctrines, but you can kind of pick which one you want to start with, and then maybe you can move around from there. So, certain close combat armies get their bonus straight away. I can sort of see thematically why they've said, oh, but this is how all the Codex Astartes go from one to the next to the other. But it doesn't sort of work game-wise, because, like I said, Iron Hands get their bonus from turn one. Why would they even care about the others? Whereas some of the others have to wait till turn 3 before their big bonus kicks in. By turn 3, the game's normally sort of won or lost by then.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with Iron Hands is, this is the thing, it's so easy to get access to some really now very cheap, devastating firepower, because all of a sudden you can take 3 Devastator squads with heavy bolters. Each one of those Devi squads is costing you, 105 points? And 100, so 315 points for 15 Devi Marines with heavy bolters that are -2, re-rolling ones natively. It's ridiculous.
How many points are we saying a unit with 5 heavy bolters is?
Well, you can't have 5 heavy bolters, you can only have 4, because the captain...
4 heavy bolters. Hang on, let me just check quickly.
It's 105, because it's 65 for the unit, and then... because bizarrely, Devi Marines weren't reduced in points like Tactical Marines, so Devi Marines are still 13 points.
It's because they knew how horrific they're going to be turn 1.
Oh, God, yeah. Well,
they're 105 points. So for 9 points more, you get a Razorback with a twin-linked assault cannon.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see Razorback spam come back big time.
Possibly. But again, heavy bolter Marines, you can fill out squads of the things, and they're really, they're viable, man.
Yeah, so what you could do is just run a 5-man tactical squad with a heavy bolter in a Razorback with twin assault cannon.
Or you could run a Devastator squad with heavy bolters in a Razorback.
Yes. And then...
Well, if you're putting yourself in your Razorback, that's a turn of shooting you've lost.
Well, no, you just get out.
You get out and move and shoot. It's fine. You put them in the Razorback to protect them turn 1 if you don't go first.
Oh, that's true. Like the old Centurions in the Land Raider trick.
That's it, mate.
And then you make your captain a chapter master.
Why?
You don't take captains as Iron Hands.
To get all the rerolls.
Yeah, but you don't need them. You're re-rolling ones natively. Just take the lieutenants.
Yeah, but then you're re-rolling 1s and 2s.
Well, who cares?
You're still going to come up against units that have minuses to hit.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Just take lieutenants. It's fine.
No, because it does matter. Because if you come up against an army of -1, you're then missing out on those 2s and 3s, which when you've got a chapter master, you're still going to benefit from.
Yeah, I don't think it matters as much as you think it does.
I reckon it does. I've played against Gilliman recently multiple times, and he's horrific. Because the amount of times I've run my Eldar versus Gilliman, and he's like, do you want a lightning fast reflex to be -2? And I'm like, no, it doesn't really matter, because you get to re-roll everything with a gazillion shots. It's like, I'm going to die regardless.
It's a fair example, but I think when you're going to want to maximize units over HQs, and of the two, it's going to be more efficient just to take the lieutenants than the captains.
So points-wise, yeah, just to get more stuff
100%. 100%. Because you want to max... Because the thing about heavy support choices they are quite expensive, but they're quite expensive because they're devastating, and that's how you run it. That's why things like, again, even like the Storm Talon, as we were saying, it's really, really potent. There's so many amazing options that you can do with Iron Hands. I suspect Iron Hands will be everywhere until we see what the Imperial Fists get, because I suspect the Imperial Fists will also be bananas, but we will wait and see.
I'm not entirely sure about that, because if you listen to Frontline Gaming on their podcast, Reese talks, obviously he's one of the playtesters, and he's been saying for the last month or so that Iron Hands will likely be the new Ultramarines and will be the one that most people will be taking, because it's that good. And now we can see why. But I do find it a bit odd that if one of the playtesters, before the game has come out, is fully aware that Iron Hand is a much better chapter tactic or much better traits than all the other chapters, why did they not balance it so that wasn't the case? Just seems like a really weird thing for them to be aware of but didn't fix. But then maybe he was aware of it because that's what GW had done.
He did say
GW
that
didn't want to change it.
He said that everyone's going to run Imperial Fists, and because like they're going to be the most damaging, but Iron Hands are going to be the most forgiving in terms of if you make any mistakes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
I imagine Imperial Fists are going to have something mad up their sleeves, but again, we wait and see.
Maybe they'll make it mandatory that your opponent has to take a building, because they always chuck those rules in for being better at killing buildings, but no one takes them, so it's a completely redundant rule.
Indeed. So, Rich, what was the final scores, my friend?
The final scores after all that was, despite an early lead, in last place was Joe with 8 points.
Well done, Joe.
And then in second place, with a respectable 10 points, was Phil, last week's champion. But no, the new champion of the not the end of the show quiz was Dan with 12 points.
Notice how they shower me in praise. My adoring public. What a lovely bunch you are. Well, you know, I'd like to take this time to thank Rich for putting on a fantastic quiz as always. And for transitioning now to the next segment of the show, we're going to talk to Tim. We're going to talk to Tim about his Grand Tournament Heat 2 performance. Thanks very much, guys. Woo! Welcome back, everybody. This section of the podcast has been recorded twice, but you didn't know that until I told you. So, you know, hopefully it's better the second time around, because I kind of felt like we were on top form the first time around. Obviously, bar the fact that I made a mistake and forgot to record all of my audio. But bar that little mishap, it's been pretty good up till now. Wouldn't you say so, Tim?
Yeah, I'd say so. I felt like last night's recording was an amazing triumph, but the audience will never know. But tonight will just be as good, so it's okay.
I believe so, yeah, absolutely. If not better, we will have learned and refined from our earlier mistakes.
Hopefully so.
And one such mistake that we won't be making again is we won't be including that silly boy Joe, who can't be present for the second time round of recording.
Yes, that's true. But then again, we can just sort of edit it in with random goat noises.
It's true. I can take some of the Joe audio from last night and then edit it in to make it appear like he's here. So, for example, I was to say, "Hey Joe, how's it going?"
Probably. I recently got a Leviathan from actual Forge World, and having held and put together non-Forge World models, Forge World models from another company. The official stuff is a lot nicer to work with, and the quality is a lot better.
The problem is with that, obviously, though, is that that's just really confusing. But what isn't confusing, ever, is the fact that we have Phil here. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm good, thanks. I'm glad I'm not confusing as well.
Well, exactly. This is legitimate Phil, everybody. Smooth, buttery Phil coming from you live from the hobby shed or wherever he happens to be right now.
It is the shed now, yeah. I've got a good setup where I can shed and podcast at the same time, whereas prior to maybe even last episode, I was always indoors, huddled away, literally doing nothing but the podcast.
Incredible. Are you going to get like a whole sort of live streamy setup in there with like microphones and cameras and fun stuff?
That seems like a lot of effort.
Tell me about it. That's what I've done. Whew. Load of fun. Anyway, we're not here to talk about all of those nuanced, interesting things. We're here to talk about Tim's Warhammer 40,000 Grand Tournament Heat 2, the army he took, the games he played, the people he encountered, how he got on, all those things and more we will talk about right now. So, Tim, would you like to begin by telling us what you did? Obviously, people can check back at earlier episodes to find out exactly in detail what you were doing. I think it was episode 24. This is the same problem I had the first time around where I hadn't got around to checking it, and I still haven't. But nonetheless, we talked about it in the past, but now it is the present day. Tell us what you took. Did it alter at all? How did it go on? Stuff, please.
Sure. Let us crack on then. So, to recap over the army, I was taking Eldari this time, and just a single faction of Ulfway all across the board. So, we're not taking Ultark or Hamsan or any of that silly nonsense. Just a mono faction. So, Ulfway has a 6-up ignore wounds for those that don't know, and then to kick things off, we'll go into the battalion detachment. So first up is my Autark, the non-flying variant or the non-jumpy variant, and he was my warlord and had a star glaive, and he had the relic of the Phoenix gem. So on a 4-up, if he does a wound, he comes back with a wound, I believe, or something along those lines.
That is not how the Phoenix gem works, Tim. No.
I got it wrong then.
You did, yeah. So on a 2+, you do D3 mortal wounds to everything around you. So every unit within 3 inches of him, friend or foe, suffers D3 mortal wounds. And if you successfully cause 1 mortal wound, you come back to life with 1 wound.
Yes, that's the one. So not a 4-up, but a 2-up.
No.
But anyway, yeah, that actually only came up once in my games. Anyway, and then the second HQ choice was a Warlock. Nothing fancy, bog standard. And then moving on to troops was 3 sets of Guardians with a heavy weapon platform in each of them, which was a scatter laser. I then had a fast attack choice of 5 Wind Riders with shuriken cannons. I then had a Hemlock and 3 Wave Serpents, all with shuriken cannons as well. And then moving on to a Spearhead detachment, I had Eldrad Orpharan, a minimum squad of Dark Reapers with Reaper launchers and a Tempest launcher for the Exarch, and then 2 Fire Prisms, just bog standard as they came. And that was pretty much a list. So a well-rounded list, something that I sort of put together with the help of Dan, just because I wanted to try and play different armies and sort of understand how to use them a bit better, and also by playing them, I sort of understand how to play against them as well. So, yeah, that's the list.
Yeah. I mean, the aspiration and the kind of build of the army is built around a sort of entry-level point for Craftworld Eldari. I think, obviously, most people understand that the more optimized build are built around lots and lots of planes, but obviously for Tim, it's not really about running the super optimized stuff. It's more about running a well-rounded selection of Eldari units that allows him to understand the certain nuances of all the different elements that they bring to the table. So you've got your jet bikes, you've got your guardians, you've got your wave serpents, you've got your flyer, you've got your, it's got a good mix of tanks, psychers, characters, infantry, jet bikes, which are very much still, the bedrock of any kind of Craftworld Eldari army, utilising things like battle focus, so the idea of the jet bike or Wind Rider jet bikes with shuriken cannons was that they were able to, move, advance, and still fire, which is a pretty important element and something that can be really well utilised by Tim's army. It's just an interesting mix of things. Not the most competitive army in the world, but I feel like it fulfilled its brief in as much as it helped him understand what it is that the army kind of represents and is capable of, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely an army I'm going to take to other 40k events, just to play around with it a bit more. but it's also going to act as it is acting as my backup army at the moment until I get my next army put together, which is quite nice as well. So yeah, it did everything I wanted it to do, which was quite nice. Boom.
And it's quite unusual that you've got the heavy weapon platforms in, sort of rocking very old school style Elder there. Was anyone surprised by it, and how did the weapon platforms do?
No, they weren't. I would say not many people were surprised by it. I think many people were more surprised that it was just a my faction and I wasn't rocking like 6 flyers and a whole bunch of bikes and stuff. The weapon platforms in themselves, they didn't actually do too much. They chipped off a wound here and there, but it wasn't like anything decisive. Where they did come in handy though, and this was part of my newbiness learning, is that they're there for like the free up shield. Pretty much, it's like having a worse version of a storm shield on a squad.
Well, a worse version of a storm shield, but at the same time, 2 wounds and a free up armor save is pretty good in a unit made up of majoritively 5 up armor saves and 1 wound. So not too bad.
That's just a regular armor save though, not an invuln, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's still pretty good.
But also to clarify, I think Phil's point of confusion is possibly that he's getting confused with the vowel or I can't remember exactly how that's pronounced, but it's like VWL, as in a W, not the W. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But the vowel support batteries are the ones that have the vibro cannon or the D cannon or the night spinner or spitter rifles or whatever they are. Again, this is the thing. Even I, as someone who's played Craftworld Elder for pretty much his entire 40k gaming career, can't even remember all the different weapons on those support batteries because they're very, very rarely used. So yeah, the heavy weapon platforms that he's referring to are common amongst Guardian Defender squads, whereas I think, Phil, you possibly were talking about the more very, very rare support battery option, which few Elder players take.
Okay.
But there you go. But nonetheless, again, taking scatter lasers on those is also quite a rare oddity, and I think again when we were talking through the list, the scatter lasers are on the platforms just to make the platforms as cheap as they possibly could be, but also because of again points limitations and trying to get all the elements in play. So once we started tweaking and moving things around, bizarrely spending those 9 points or whatever it was on taking shuriken cannons instead of scatter lasers on the free platforms started adding up. So it was like, bizarrely, I think we just needed to save 9 points at the end, and that's what the scatter laser change brought about, essentially. So it's like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, they were handy. I'll take them again. Well, I am taking them again, but yeah. But yeah, so that was the list, and we drove up on the Friday, and Dan accompanied me, which was quite nice. And oh my god, I just remembered it took us frickin' ages to get to Warhammer World on that day.
Yeah, it was relatively wet that day in terms of the weather, and as a result of that weather, everyone on the road in the UK decided to either break down, smash into each other, or just drive incredibly foolishly. So yeah, what is normally 2.5 hours for us from this sort of neck of the woods, clocked in at around, what you want to say, 5 hours?
Yeah, it pretty much took us 5 hours. It was a long old drive.
It was pretty tedious.
But nevertheless, that never dampened our spirits, because when we got there, we saw Joe and Phil playing a game. Or was Joe playing Richie at the time?
I can't remember.
I can't remember. Anyway, the boys were playing games, and it was great. And we all gave each other like a pat on the back. It's like, yeah, we're here. Woo! Warhammer World, Warhammer GT, whoop whoop. So that sort of spurred on the spirits a bit. And that sort of cheered me up again and got me ready for the next day. But what was pretty cool about this GT Heat is that I bumped into quite a few people that I faced off in the last GT Heat. And that was quite nice, because it was just well, not only to see familiar faces, but also to see if they've like swapped armies or if they've changed their lists at all. And lo and behold, nobody's really swapped armies. Everybody has changed their list, though. I think maybe I'm the only one who swaps armies like every month. Well, except for Joe. Joe probably holds the title for that.
I was going to say, it's not a very common trait for people to be able to switch up their armies on a regular basis. You know, most people have to kind of resign themselves to the core of their collection and then kind of add things or change things, as opposed to doing a Joe and collecting and delivering entirely new armies. I mean, Phil, you started a Tyranid army, 5 years ago?
Well, no, maybe not 5 years ago. I think definitely 3 to 4. I collected a lot. I built a lot and converted a fair bit, but I only ever painted up one squad. And then I think I was like I tend to do like a summer project normally, and I basically was doing that for the summer, and then sort of autumn time came around and we had another 40k event coming along, so I ended up getting distracted by, I need to add some more things to my Krieg army for this event that we're going to. And then that's just been a constant roller coaster battle between what I sort of want to do to add to my existing army versus a side project which is more fun and not necessarily related to either 40k or for my Krieg. I've sort of gotten around that now by adding extra Imperial elements to my Krieg. So obviously I've done some Assassins and then I've done some Inquisition, which should all tie in quite nicely. And I've obviously bought some Knights as well to add at some point. But that's sort of, each time I do that, and that's great because it means I'm just collecting a large Imperium army at the end of the day. It then distracts me from, finishing off that Tyranid army that I started all those years ago.
That's it. But as I say, that's kind of the point. It takes most people an incredibly long time to get around to doing another army. Thus the reason why players like Phil have majoritively been using Krieg the entirety of his competitive life cycle within the 40k tournament realm. But yeah, no, Tim, you're seemingly being able to buck the trend and mix things up, which is interesting, mate. So yeah, good on you. So game one, we were playing. What were we playing? Was it not Vital Intelligence? Cut off the head, something along those lines.
It was cut off the head.
Yes.
Boom.
Yeah.
So cut off the head came around. You were wandering up to your table. You were thinking, right, game one, important game. Got to set the pace, set the tone. So what did you face off against? How did you feel going into game one? And what was the overall experience for you?
So yeah, as you say, I gleefully trundled up to my first table of the day with all these great, brilliant, masterful plans in my head, and I was greeted by a lovely gentleman called Kieran, and he brought Death Guard. I was like, oh, okay, I know what Death Guard do roughly around the edges, and he was rocking a blob of 8 Blight Lords and 3 sets of 19 Poxwalkers, a Leviathan with storm cannons, a Demon Prince, and a Typhus, and 2 other Death Guard characters. Unfortunately, I don't know who they are, so apologies about that. And so, we had the old deployment of search and destroy. So the little corner tables and the semicircle kind of thing. So I ended up deploying first, I believe, in this game. And I basically put both my fire prisms on the backfield, the Hemlock to the side, and then my Wave Serpents just in front of them with everybody loaded up inside them, and then my Wind Riders just to go down the flank. The problem with this game is, though, that there was the not the Sector Mechanicus terrain, the the urban terrain, the
Cities of Death terrain.
Cities of Death terrain. Thank you. Yeah, there was a big old building right in the middle, and that was just like a massive line of sight blocker for my fire prisms. So on the first turn, I sort of skirted around half distance, and I couldn't get sight on his Leviathan.
Yeah.
And so I just tried to pile into the Poxwalkers and delete as many of them as possible. So I managed to delete a unit of Poxwalkers a turn, but he was also he deleted the Hemlock with the Leviathan. And when the Hemlock was gone, he just started tuning into my fire prisms and everything else. And it basically came down to me not being able to get to his characters to be able to do any damage to him, maybe because of bad placement on my part. And when the Blight Lords came out of reserve, oh my god. Yeah, they hit, and they hit hard. Yeah. Because it's like 9 inches away, and then they can if you make the charge, you're laughing. Like, with 2 flails in there. But it was such a great game. Like, I maybe could have played it better, but I learned so much, and it was a really nice opponent, and he had a nicely painted army. And it was just fun. Like, it was just nice friendly chat between us, like, oh, so what are you doing here? Talking about how you got into Death Guard and why, and what's he planning to do. But yeah, no, it was a really good first game. Unfortunately, I lost. So didn't really start off on the right pace, but hey ho, never mind.
I mean, if you had a good game, and obviously there were some interesting things that the guy was using there, I think, adding in that Terminator element is always an interesting addition, because those guys can really terrorize your back line, because a lot of the time when it comes to backline units, they just don't have what it takes to, deal with that kind of threat and that kind of toughness. So, yeah, that's super interesting for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think the thing is, I was thinking about this, like, if I win my first game, then, because obviously it's so easy, all you do is just roll sixes, right, guys? Yeah. Then I would have been put up to the higher tables, which I necessarily didn't really want. So losing the first game probably worked in my favour more than I realise, looking back at it now. Yeah. Because I get to be in the bottom feeders.
It's been a very...
I sort of think that can work. I don't know if it statistically really makes much difference overall. But it sort of felt like, for me, it was a slightly better way of doing it than what I normally do, which tends to be to win my first game.
Yeah. It does feel like that. Sorry, it does feel like if you lose your first game, it's kind of like it takes a bit of the pressure off in a way for my mind.
Yeah, totally. I think the thing is if you post a loss in that first game, you definitely have a much more interesting kind of experience ahead of you, because you've really kind of fallen into a group of much more kind of interesting and different opponents. I will say this, if you win games 1, 2 and 3, you know the sorts of things that you're going to come up against, and to an extent there's only really a handful of armies, or maybe not necessarily a handful of armies, but there's only a select few armies that really perform especially well and can consistently deliver win results. So when you're winning, you expect to see Elder Flyers, you expect to see Tau gun lines, you expect to see, Imperial Knights and Mixed Imperium, and, all the kind of, Gene Stealer Cult as well, can't forget about them. I mean, they're definitely the new hotness right now. I mean, the way I gauge new hotness is what's Jake trying to collect lately. And having seen him post pictures of, some GSC stuff the other day, I was like, right, fair enough. They must be the best thing on the internet right now. Not to be unfair to Jake, he's a great lad, but it's just, it's a funny way of approaching things, I suppose. But, look, I mean, long story short, I think winning means that you understand the sorts of things that you're going to see. Losing puts you into a very random world of very bizarre, potential upsetting army lists that you don't really entirely know what you're going to do against. So, yeah, it's an interesting place to be, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. It's also, I quite like the randomness because I didn't really want to face any of the hard hitting lists for sure. I don't have an army that can compete with that, as I found out later in the tournament. But anyway, I shall move on to game 2.
Okay.
To stop me from waffling on. So after my first loss, I wasn't disheartened or anything. And so I rocked up to my second table and I met probably one of the best opponents I've played so far. A lovely guy called Toby, and he was rocking a Custodes Dreadnought list. And
that, Phil? You're being replaced by this Toby fella. No longer the best.
Who's this? What?
What's going on? And
he's not denying it, Phil.
I'm sorry. He was such an energetic guy, and he had an amazingly painted army.
Oh my god!
Who actually went to win Best Painted, I believe.
Did he?
Did he win? No, he didn't win Best Painted Army, but he did win a Best Painted category.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it was for his Inquisitor Dreadnought.
Must be a bizarre thing to bear witness to a game between yourself and another incredibly, upbeat and or positive gaming individual. It's it must be one of those noises that only dogs can hear.
What was really nice about yeah, probably. What was really nice about Toby was that it was like, oh, how are you? And it's like you instantly get the energy from him. And he was like, right, okay, this is how I play. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he was like, I have a dice tray, and it's up to you if you follow this rule. But if any dice fall out of the tray, I don't count it. So the dice have to be in the tray. And I was like, perfect. And if you don't mind, I'll do the same. He was like, no, that's absolutely fine. And then we clarified all the terrain rules, and I was like, cool. And he was like, yeah, let's do this. And then he looked up at the board and he saw the mission of 4 pillars, and then he was like, right, I can't actually score anything in this mission. And I was like, yeah, you haven't got any troops. He was like, not to worry, it's fine. Kill points are still a thing, aren't they? I was like, yes, they are. And it was like, brilliant, I'm going to charge you. And I was like, brilliant, I'm going to sit on the backfield. It was like, ah. But anyway, so yeah, he was.
You can hear a real sort of joy in Tim here as he talks about old Toby. So if you're listening, Toby, you'd definitely be up for a second date. I mean, game at some point in the future, right?
I'll totes take a second date to Toby. I'll wear a Hawaiian shirt and a white vest just to match him as well.
A Hawaiian shirt and a white vest.
Yeah.
That reminds me of that character from Pulp Fiction, the one that was no, not Pulp Fiction, sorry, Reservoir Dogs, the undercover cop.
Oh.
When he was on the rooftop doing the whole script thing, I swear he was in a white vest and a Hawaiian shirt.
No, he could have been. It's been so long since I've watched Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, you should go back and watch it. I mean, and tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film. But anyway, yeah. So he was running a full custode list, and yet I parked up on the backfield, and it was actually a tough game, just because he ran into my army as quickly as possible, as expected, and so I tried popping off a dreadnought one at a time, or as much as possible, and it kind of worked because I sort of set off the serpent shields and just tried to do mortal wounds to whittle one down each at a time, but also I had to deploy my troops to actually capture the objectives and score points. The problem is that his dreadnoughts can just smash into my army and just delete things as and when he wants. So although I was consistently scoring points every turn, Toby was claiming the kill points more than I was, and so we were pretty neck and neck. And it was the only reason why I clinched it was because I had deep striked my Dark Reapers into his back lines, and they just sat on an objective in his deployment zone. We ran Hammer and Anvil, by the way. Sorry, forgot to mention that earlier. And so by the time he had run down to the other end of the table, on turn 3, I brought in my Dark Reapers. And so he had to run his his few dreadnoughts back by that time. And I was just trying to throw my troops my Wave Serpents and stuff to act as roadblocks and hold him up. And yeah, he just couldn't get the Dark Reapers annihilated by the end of the game. So on turn 5, they scored the extra point and gave me Line Breaker, which just gave me that one extra point because we didn't manage to get turn 6 and gave me the win. So although he was on the back foot, it was a pretty close game and a fun game at that. So yeah, that was my game 2.
Sounds amazing, mate. Sounds like a right nail biter, which is always the best type of game, really.
Oh, it was. It also taught me a lesson of when he said, I'm on the back foot here because I can't really score, it kind of gave me a bit of cockiness and arrogance about the match, because I felt he gave me a sense of security, like I've already got this in the bag, and that wasn't true. Like those Custody Dreadnoughts, not the Telemons, just the normal ones with their swords and guns and whatnot, they can actually output some serious damage, especially when they go toe-to-toe to stuff.
They're pretty legit, all of the types of different Custodes Dreadnoughts. I need to further familiarise myself with the updated rules for them, but because they've just gone into like official rule status, so I need to have a look at how that's all kind of coming together now. But based on what they were a week ago, they're pretty solid.
Yeah, they're definitely a solid unit to take, but it makes it a lot easier when you're facing a nicely painted army as well. Such a clean and crisp style. It kind of reminded me of good old Sean's style, but it's kind of exaggerated with the highlights, like over accentuated edge highlighting, as in quite thick, but neatly and cleanly done.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was pretty good. So that netted me the win. So I was on a high, loving life. I've already done better than the last GT, so everything was coming up Millhouse at this point, so I couldn't really do any worse. So the world was my oyster. So I rocked up to table 3, filled with such glee and joy, and my opponent wasn't there, and so I set up. I took my troops and all my toys off the little tray that you do, and then a guy called Joe turned up, and Joe
as in Jojo?
As not our Joe.
Oh, not our Joe.
No. I wish it was our Joe, although I probably would have got the same result. But it was a different Joe with a Custodes list.
Oh,
and
that Joe.
Yeah, that Joe. I've forgotten his surname.
Something like a May something or other. So I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, an M something. No. He's a Red Install player. Anyway,
he's a Red Install regular.
He's a Red Install regular, apparently.
But how did you come across this information? Did he just tell you that?
Because I actually went into the Red Install a few weeks ago, just on my day off, and I was talking about the GT, and he was like, "Oh, some guy was there," and he was like, was he running this? And I was like, yeah. And was it painted like this? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, we're so sorry. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow, what a reputation.
Yeah. So he was running the 3 Gladiuses, a Talamon, the Orion Flyer, a Banner guy, I think it's a Shield Captain, and I think that's it. And he pretty much castled up with his deployment, because this was the mission Beachhead, and we had rolled frontline assault. And so I, again, just stuck my fire prisoners in the backfield and my Wave Serpents as close to the deployment line as possible, so I could get the middle objective, which probably was a mistake. But yeah, This was a tough match. The damage output from the Gladiuses alone are just brutal. He was a nice guy to play against. He knows his stuff really well. He's a knowledgeable player. I'll definitely say that. And the best thing about this game, the highlight of this game, I would say, is that I did actually manage to pop his Talamon, and then it exploded, which then just did a whole load of mortal wound damage to his other Gladiuses. So I did manage, so a little sort of cherry to the icing there. Silver lining to the clouds. But
we got what you meant.
Yeah, you got what I meant. But the point is, like, it was a brutal match. He knew he had this in the bag. I had nothing really to threaten him. I was a bit afraid of the flyer just because I didn't know what to do about it, and so I left it alone. But I actually think that was the right thing to do. It really was those Gladiuses that just destroyed everything. They're crazy. So So unfortunately, game 3 was a loss for me, but it didn't dishearten me in any way because I was still beaming off the one win I had.
I think that list was quite a popular build because I think it might have been with you, Tim. We were looking around at one point, or maybe it was with Joe, and we discovered that there was at least 3 of those Orion dropships. And that's the most I've ever seen of them on the table. So I think they were pretty popular by most standards. In comparison, there was almost no Chaos Knight lists. I think there was only 1 or 2, and I was expecting there to be loads.
Yeah, I was expecting there to be a lot more Chaos Knights lists because we were talking about this, and it's like, well, they're obviously going to be the new hotness, but maybe it's just too soon. Maybe more will be around in Heat 3.
Yeah, I think as well, though, I mean, so I've played Joe before, and I know him relatively well. I mean, we've chatted a few times at different events and things of that nature, and I don't find him to be a bad lad at all. He's, I think Joe's problem is that, his demeanour is very odd when he kind of first encounters you because he's very serious about the game and he's very serious about trying to get the win. Especially when I met him because we were at the final of this tournament that we were playing in, and obviously he was keen to ensure that he maintained his then winning streak and keep things moving in that direction. And I think since then I've kind of spoken to other people in the community, and there's been a few little controversial moments and instances like where people in the Reading store, for example, are calling out things like, "Oh, I'm sorry that had to happen" type vibe and what have you, but. At its core, he's a nice lad who's really passionate about the hobby, and I think, ultimately that's a really, really good thing. But yeah, I think, he definitely probably needs to work on some of his kind of initial like banter and demeanour, because when you get to know him, once you've actually talked to him a few times, once he's comfortable around you, he's actually a really nice guy to chat to, and he's got a lot of passion about it and a lot of enthusiasm for it. I just think, I don't know, sometimes he can just kind of come off a bit weird, and then that can kind of, put people on the wrong foot. Plus, he is a very, very good player, and I think as well with that, you can have a lot of people who, can see some negatives to those situations. And I'm not disagreeing with anyone who has some negative things to maybe say about the individual, but at the same time, I think, it's a game of small toy soldiers. And, I'm always in favour of encouraging as many players to get involved and get engaged with the hobby. And I think, ultimately, a few little mild transgressions here and there can be overlooked in favour of the fact that I think at its core he's just a bit misunderstood by some people. I mean, what was your vibe, Tim, having played him for the first time and met him for the first time and not known anything about him going into it? Was it awkward, or was it just generally sort of just a bit sort of
No. He was a pleasant chap to play against. Didn't have any bad vibes from him. Didn't have any awkwardness. He was maybe silent at the start, but we're two strangers meeting over a table of toy soldiers, as you say. But that is the icebreaker at the end of the day, because you've got that common sort of demeanour between you to talk about.
And I found that with him as well, right? Because if you just talk to him and are normal with him and just kind of try and bring him into the conversation, which I know you will have 100% done, I think he's just an all-round, relatively nice fella. I think the problem often stems from the fact that a lot of other tournament players in these situations are all being a little bit too intense or a little bit too gamey. And, again, I think you can kind of come to the table with some of those issues yourself. But, I mean, again, I don't know, it's interesting. I have to acknowledge the fact that I've heard of his reputation being negative. I've seen people, heard from people who have had negative things to say, but my experience of him has been, I've played him once, he won, but, we were having something resembling a mirror match, although it was a bit of a kind of upside-down style Stranger Things mirror match, because his army was Drakari and mine was Craftworld, but in that matchup, he who goes first wins, and he went first. And everything in my army died, because that's what happens in that matchup. Had I gone first, I'm fairly confident everything in his army would have been dead. But it all came down to a single roll, and he did everything perfectly. So during the whole process, I was like, well, yeah, fair enough. It is what it is. And, I think what surprised me was after that game, people kind of got wind of the fact that I played him and then started asking me questions. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. This guy's really got a weird reputation, hasn't he? And again, I feel like we dwelled on this too long, and I'm probably going to edit some of this stuff down because I don't want to kind of get into a thing where I'm being unreasonable about a guy that I actually don't mind. But if I leave it in, I leave it in. Joe, I don't mind you, buddy. Don't worry about all these silly people who have silly things to say. I'm, whatever. Move on, Tim. What was next?
All right. So after that day one, I was still pretty chipper. I had a lovely time, and then obviously we were hanging out with the 40k Brawl guys. Jake was a lovely chap. Ollie was a lovely guy, and obviously Adam was a good chap as well. And then we bumped into a few other people, and our fun and frolics on the Nottingham town was always enjoyable. So after some good R&R, that brings around day two. And for my first match, I faced off against a lovely opponent called Andy. Not as lovely as Toby, but still a lovely opponent.
Wow, there you go. How do you feel about that, Andy? Not as lovely as Toby.
I think to beat Toby, you have to be a man of some special talents, I'll say. Goodness.
So where's Phil ranking in this now? Is he ahead of Andy, below Toby? What's gone on here?
Oh yeah. Phil's taken the pip above Andy.
Oh, is he? Sure. So it's a Phil sandwich now.
Yeah, it's a Phil sandwich.
Oh, how do you feel about that, Phil, being wrapped between two fine men?
Well, it's probably my first time being in a situation like this.
And we're all there just stroking your beard, Phil.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not the first time, but the less said about that, the...
Tim's got hot mustard drenched over the top.
Lovely.
I was trying to think of a appropriately orange condiment, but I couldn't come up with anything other than mustard, which is obviously yellow, but I don't know.
There's not many orange condiments.
You're the marmalade, Tim. There you go.
I'll take it. I'll roll with it.
Boom.
I am pretty sweet. Anyways, so I faced off against Andy, and he was running Deathwatch, and along with like a bit of Imperial Guard, where he had 3 tank commanders and a Razorback, and one of the tank commanders had the Relic battle cannon thingy bob. Phil, you should be able to tell me.
Yeah, that's the Hammer of Sunderance from the Vigilus detachment. So it does flat 3 damage rather than D3, and is pretty much an auto include in any guard army, I think.
Yeah, I can totally see why. I didn't make a note of which sort of regiment, detachment. No.
Was it Katachan?
It could have been Katachan.
What were they doing?
Can you remember the ability?
I can't really remember, I'm afraid. I think it was more the rerolls. I was rerolling something.
Well, if he was rerolling, it's probably Cadia.
Okay.
Cadia reroll.
Well, rerolling to hits is...
Gone.
Yeah.
Oh, Phil's gone. Phil!
Well, I was wondering who was going, because every time I tried, you kept saying...
Go.
If it's re-rolls to hits, then it's Cadian. If it's re-rolling the number of shots that you do, then it's Ketchum.
Okay, yeah, it was rerolling the hits, so it was Cadian. But on top of that, he also had a Corvus Blackstar. I know. Crazy.
A what?
Corvus. Ooh, a Corvus Blackstar.
Sorry, what is a Corvus Black? I've never even heard of one of those.
The flying, the Deathwatch Flyer.
There's a Deathwatch Flyer?
There is a Deathwatch Flyer. They exist.
Really?
Yeah,
It is a thing.
it is a thing.
Oh, I seem to remember them having one of those in 7th edition, but I've never seen one recently. Are they genuinely still a thing?
Well, kind of.
So
I mean, funny, of course I know.
Dan's
I
troll
know.
level 10.
Exactly. Of course, I know that there is a Deathwatch Flyer. It's just utter poo.
It didn't do too badly. Like,
Really?
To chip off Guardians, yeah.
Well, there you go. Well worth the 700 points or whatever they are.
But yeah, so and then he had a watch captain, a normal, well, I say normal, but a 10-man squad of Deathwatch Marines with 2 storm shields in them, some thunder hammers, and other various bolt guns and bits and bobs. And then he had 2 Primaris Deathwatch units as well. And this was the mission of Vital Intelligence. And so this was another Hammer and Anvil deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Sorry, this was... what was this? Spearhead, sorry.
Spearhead, okay.
The triangle-y one. And so we both deployed and set off about our ways. And then I proceeded to just try and pop off his tanks as much as possible. So again, rushed everything forward. Eldrad and the Autarch were... the Autarch was actually in the backfield with the Dark Reapers because I wanted to give the re-rolling hit rolls of 1 to the Fire Prisms and the Dark Reapers. And then, the Warlock and Eldrad were still in the Way Serpents. So I dropped off Eldrad and the Warlock and his troops in the second turn. But yeah, I pretty much popped his Razorback first turn, which exploded and did a bunch of mortal wounds to his watch captain and some of his Primaris units. Didn't do any to the tank because it was too far away, or the first tank commander. And then I popped off his second tank as well. Did quite a lot of wounds to it, didn't pop it off, but got it down a bracket. My Way Serpents managed to chip off a few more wounds off the first tank commander that I was shooting at, and my Wind Rhinos managed to pretty much whittle down a Primaris unit down to 2 models, and so I was sitting pretty good at this point. I had 3 objectives, and the funny thing with this mission is that on his turn, and then at the start of turn 2, and every turn after that, we kept on rolling 6s to see which objective was activated, and that just caused mayhem to the game, and it was brilliant. And I'll do it all over again because after the first round of volley fire from my army, I could see he was a bit disheartened because popping off a tank, doing a few wounds and deleting a few units is never a nice feeling. Really, like if you see your army disappear in front of you, it's a bit like, oh, right, okay, so this is a one-sided match. And when I saw that, I was like, don't worry, mate, like you've still got your 10-man tactical blob to come down, you've still got your Corvus Blackstar, and you're still in the fight. Like your army is pretty resilient, and my army is not that resilient now because I've been popping off serpent shields and whatnot to try and get tanks down. That seems to be quite a favourite tactic of mine. Anyway,
clearly, it's a good tactic.
I like it. And anyway, so he was like, yeah, you're right. And the Corvus Blackstar actually removed a unit of Guardians from an objective, which meant he could bring down his 10-man squad in reserve, from reserve, sorry, to get towards that objective as well, which meant that was contested. And then by the time I had deleted the other tanks, he had actually chipped away at most of my troop units. And the Corvus Blackstar was chipping away at my Fire Prism.
Okay.
My Hemlock unfortunately stopped too close to the 10-man squad as well. By this time, the Hemlock had been peppered by everything as well, because I'd used lightning fast reflexes on my Wind Riders, because they were sitting on an objective on turn 4, and so I was just trying to get that extra point because I actually had 3 units on objective and he only had 2 units, and at the end of his turn it would have been 2 units each on objective and 1 contested. Anyway, and so my Hemlock stopped too close, and then he played the Death Watch stratagem. I think it's 1 CP where you get to shoot at something if it stops within a certain range, which just literally chipped off those last few wounds, unfortunately. And yeah, it was a really close game, and it actually ended up in a draw. But I was happy to take a draw from that match. And I think this is, again, another match where I got too complacent because I deleted like 2 tanks in the first turn and a squad of Primaris, or almost a squad of Primaris, forcing him to spend his CP to auto-pass morale. I was like, oh, okay, so I've got this, even though I was assuring the person, Andy, that he's still in the competition, but I thought I had it. But yeah, because of each turn we're rolling 6s for the objective, so every objective's worth 2 points. It kept him in the game, and that's what did it at the end. I think if I didn't get First Strike, Slay the Warlord, or Line Breaker, that was the only game I actually got all 3 secondary objectives as well.
Oh, good work.
Thank you. He would have won it. He would have won it.
But he didn't, or did he?
No, he didn't. It ended up in a draw. It was great.
A draw is a fantastic
Those close
achievement.
games are... Yeah, those close games are always the best ones anyway, I tend to find.
Yeah. I was really happy to walk away with a draw from that as well. Just because the one thing I definitely learned about this hobby is nothing's guaranteed. It's all down to the dice rolls, which is stupid to say, but you forget about that sometimes.
No, absolutely. And the thing is with that, right, I mean, getting all those 6s early doors can really swing one of those games. I think had I had a series of 6s like you did at the start of the game, my win would have been pretty much guaranteed, because the level of which I was securing objectives early doors was so aggressive that, had it been that those were the result of a 6, there would have been no way of him ever catching me. But unfortunately in my game, that was not the case until it mattered for my opponent, and he was able then to easily secure the win, because, the 6 was in play when he had already kind of grinded out a lot of my kind of units and things. So, to hear it working in the opposite is an interesting thing to note, I suppose.
Yeah. I've never had it happen to me before, like playing at other events as well. So, and I've played Vital Intelligence before. It was quite interesting, really. A very bizarre, interesting match.
I mean, the general philosophy of that particular match, or that particular mission, is that you want to try and establish an early lead, because it's a lot more difficult to chase a lead than it is to obviously be out in front in that mission. But again, you are really, really hoping for either turn 1 or turn 2 to get that 6 if you're going to go for that aggressive strategy, because ultimately you need to lock that down pretty early. But at the same point, it's one of those, isn't it? But sounds like a good game, though, man. And I'm glad that you got another great opponent. That's always a good thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always good to have a nice person to play against, because my last game was definitely not my funnest game of the GT. And I suppose I was due one.
Well, indeed.
So I was rocking up to my last table, and this chap turned up, and he had brought Harlequins.
Ooh, Harlequins.
Yeah. I've never faced Harlequins before. I've heard horrible things about them, and I knew they hit like a truck. They're an elite army. And so I apologised to my opponent quickly, because I said I needed to go to the toilet, which I did. But on the way back, I saw Joe, and I was like, Joe, I'm playing Harlequins. What do I do? He was like, well, what's he got? And I was like, I don't know, a bunch of bikes. And I was like, and Joe was like, all right, just try and delete them one by one. They fall over once they have no invulnerable save. And I was like, brilliant. Okay, thanks. And so I went back to the table, and I apologised for being like rushing off to the toilet and being a bit late. Anyway, but he came across all friendly and everything, but from the deployment, things started to go a bit downhill. So we rolled for the deployment map. I had my little sort of 40k shortened PDF printout rule book, and so I pulled the card of the deployment maps out, and I was like, right, you've rolled for Vanguard Strike, so which is this one, and I pointed to it. He was like, yeah, and then he started deploying, and he pretty much started deploying in Hammer and Anvil, and I was like, hang on a minute, what are you doing? He was like, I'm deploying. I was like, yeah, but we rolled on this map, and he was like, no. He was like, no, he didn't say no. He said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought we deployed on this one. I was like, right, okay, whatever, it's all right, no problem. I'll just deploy on the backfield, because I know you want to get in range as quickly as possible. It's what Harlequins do. And then also after that, I was like, just before deploying, we spoke about the terrain, and it was a sector mechanicus terrain. And I was like, the rails or the support arms don't count as line of sight blocking, but the main structure does, because it's a thick piece of plastic. And he was like, yep, that's absolutely fine. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And when my first turn came around and I lined up my fire prisms to shoot at some of his bikes, he was like, whoa, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm shooting at your bikes. He was like, yeah, but I thought we discussed this was line of blocking terrain. And I was like, no, we discussed that the supports aren't line of blocking, but the main part is. It was like, oh, I would have deployed completely differently if I had known that. And I guess I did at the time let out a little sigh of, okay. I said, all right, fine. We'll treat it as line of blocking then, because you would have never deployed like that if you thought it was otherwise. And we'll just crack on. And so I proceeded to try and whittle away what I could. I rushed everything forward into the null zone, because obviously this was narrow the search, so you have to score within a bubble, and then you got an invulnerable field, or a null invulnerable, where you lose your invulnerable save within 12 inches of the objective.
Yep.
And so it wasn't until the second turn that I rushed everything forward into the middle, because the objective was up on top of a sector mechanicus, like a hexagon shape kind of base, and so I tried to clog that up with all my units as much as possible. And his Void Weavers and Harlequin troops and everything else sort of jumped out their transports and just ran in and deleted stuff and ran into things with their fusion blasters. And oh my god, fusion blasters are horrible. I never want to see them again. And this was another thing that kind of put me on it. Well, it sort of irked me a bit, was that he declared a charge against one unit, but for him to get up there and the way I deployed meant that you would be within an inch or another unit, or you would have to go through, which you obviously can't do.
Correct, yes.
There was no way for him to actually physically get up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he just started plonking his models on top of there willy-nilly. And I was like, at this point, because it was the last match, and I knew I hadn't qualified, so there was no point like arguing it in my mind. It was like, oh, okay, whatever, let's just get this done, because you'll get the win anyway. There's no point in sort of trying to argue about this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how that game went. And to top it off, and I'm sorry to moan about this match, but I need to air my opinions. Like, please, for the love of God, don't be a soft roller. Don't let dice just trickle out of your hand. Like, actually throw them across the table. Don't fling them across the table, obviously, but roll them. Let them at least roll out of your hand and across the table a little bit. Because just letting them trickle out of your hand is just... Ugh.
I mean,
Nobody
is that
wants
really that offensive? I'm trying to understand what the complaint is.
Well, so say if your hand's like 1 centimetre above the table,
right,
and you've got dice in your hand, and you literally just open your palm and then turn your hand, that's your dice roll.
Oh, okay.
And to me, it's like... It's almost like you're placing the dice. You're not really rolling them. They're just falling out of your hand.
Right, okay. I get what you're going for.
And that just offends me for some reason.
But doesn't that
I'm sure it's still just as random, but it doesn't feel like they're rolling. So
I think that's what it is.
I get what you mean.
Also as well, though, I mean, like, in a way, that's a good way of assuring that the dice remain on the table, right?
Yeah, there is that. But...
I mean, I am a violent roller of dice. Like I'm a frantic loon when it comes to rolling dice around. I'm all about that big, massive, like hand gestures as it's like kabam! There they go. But that's not for everyone. Some people prefer nice, orderly, and then gather them up.
Yeah.
I think something in between the two is the preferred roll. Dice that don't scatter everywhere, but dice that do get a bit of bounce and roll.
Yeah, you want a bit of bounce on the old roll, don't you? The old bolts.
I'm happy for people to be like a frantic dice roller or a violent dice roller, as you say, or somewhere to be in between. But yeah, I stick by my guns. I'm going to call it the flop. The flop roll is just something I can't live with.
Well, fair enough. Do you feel like the flop roll would have offended you as much as it clearly did, had it been that your opponent was a little bit more of a, I've already forgotten his name, more of a Toby, perhaps? Could Toby flop on you?
Well, Toby could do whatever he wants. Let's not beat about on the bush here. No, I've played other people that are flop rollers, and yeah, it still irks me.
There you go.
Did he actually roll well though, or was it kind of average or worse? Above average?
He was rolling well. Like everything was hitting and destroying things.
So I guess if you're flopping and you're rolling sort of above average, then you go, "Oh, what's his technique?
Yeah.
What's he doing?"
Yeah, I think with the addedness of like, he was a nice guy. Like I have to say that he was a nice guy. I guess I described it as like a bumbling fool kind of play style, but I think he was using that to his advantage. Maybe
he was, playing the old bumbling.
The Boris Johnson
fool
card.
Yeah, the Boris Johnson card. That's what he's gone for. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because one thing I am always very keen to reassert and state to anyone who's playing 40k in a quote competitive environment is, for one, approach every game with a very kind of fair and open-minded attitude, and don't be one of those people, or at least attempt to be, or not to be one of those people that is seen to be negative or argumentative or problematic by the community. But at the same time, you have to also ensure that you don't just allow people to, you know, run through you or to push you around. And I think the thing is we're all of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are invested in this hobby because of a, you know, historical nostalgia that we have for, you know, Warhammer 40,000 when we remember it from our teens, as most of us kind of got into it, and to a simpler time, and also to the, you know, the ideas of power and blah 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 that all this nonsense kind of, you know, gives us because of, you know, the lore and the literature and all the stuff that goes around it. But what my point is like, if you're in a situation, in a gaming situation, where someone is doing something that is absolutely not within the spirit of the rules or the game, you're absolutely within your rights to inform them that you're not happy with what they're doing and that you need them to stop doing it because ultimately it's against the rules of the game. If they argue that you're incorrect, then obviously you can refer to the rulebook, and then, assuming that you are correct, you can clarify that point. But then lastly, you have TOs at your disposal, so you're able to bring those people over. And I think, you know, if I could say anything to you, Tim, I think the thing that's important is, you know, unfortunately, within the competitive 40k community, you don't want to be having stand-up rows with people. You don't want to be unreasonable with people. But if people are being unreasonable with you, you need to ultimately enforce and, you know, establish what the rules are, but also that you're not someone who's just going to let this person, you know, run over you and dictate the pace of the game. If that individual was playing me and they placed a model within an inch of my of a model that they weren't supposed to do, I would have simply have said, you can't do that. And if they said, yes I can, a bit like, well, no, show me the rule that says you can. And then they wouldn't be able to. And then I'd be like, that's cool then, so you didn't make the charge. And then they would be like, oh, no, I did because reasons and blah. Okay, cool. I mean, by all means, bring over a TO. I'm happy to discuss it with them. And then you leave it at that. And again, I'm not trying to say this like I'm some incredible, brilliant individual that, you know, that's got it all figured out. But at the end of the day, it's a game of small toy soldiers. The person you're standing across from, sitting across from, shares a lot of the same fandom that you do. And ultimately, that should be, as it often is, a means of bringing people together and sharing a common love for this bizarre but ultimately wonderful hobby. And we shouldn't really be in a situation where we're making each other feel a bit rubbish about the experience. And I don't think that individual would want that for you, and you certainly wouldn't want that for him. So ultimately, you've got to kind of do what you can while still not getting on the wrong side of people. It's an art. I don't know if I'm especially great at it, really, because saying it out loud makes it sound like I'm a bit of a horrible monster when it comes to these things, but I try my best.
No, I understand where you're coming from, and I think this is something I'm going to develop over time. I think at the moment I'm still in my pleasant gentleman stage of playing because I don't have the full grasp of the rules sort of knuckled away in my head, and because of that I don't have the confidence to challenge stuff as much.
Sure.
But as time goes on, that confidence will grow, and I will challenge things a lot more. But I think I'll try and do it in a sort of funny, jokey way, to not try and see sort of, argumentative. But at the same time, I'm also got to think, well, if I ever am in a situation where it's like to qualify or not, I will definitely probably call over a TO. At that point, again, because it was the last game and I knew I wasn't qualifying, I sort of just let things slide, really.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a shame to end the whole weekend on a game like that, though.
Yeah,
where you feel like, I mean, because it's the thing, it's the likelihood of, I mean, I don't know what his situation was and where he was. Maybe he was on 2 wins and this win would have, you know, potentially catapulted him into the qualifying circle or whatever you want to call it. Maybe that is what happened, but you know, at the same time, it's like, come on, man. I mean, again, in my 5th game, I played against a really lovely Tyranid player with a beautiful army, nice guy, and in battle round 2, when I was having a lot of failings with my dice rolls, I was really, really grumpy because the dice rolls were not going my way, and I knew there and then that I was being outwardly very, very vocal about my frustrations with the situations, but my goal was from there on in was to kind of recognise that and make the adjustment, because I had come to peace with what was happening, and I ultimately, did what I felt was right and corrected my behaviour and played the rest of the game in the knowledge that I was going to lose, but that I wanted to ensure that the guy who was beating me was having a great experience, and that I was also having, trying to get what little wins I could out of the situation. And, in the end, actually, it turned out to be a really fun, entertaining game, which was always going to be the case because he had a great army and he was a great opponent. It's just that thing where, I had sold myself going into the GT Heat 2 that I was going to do much better than it turns out I ended up doing, and I think that realisation really kind of cut me deep at the time, and I behaved a bit inappropriately as a result, but again, only for about 20 minutes while my dice went all sorts of wrong. But once that had concluded itself, I was back on board and happy again. But people are human, aren't they, at the end of the day? And that's one of the really weird elements of all these things. And I've seen it with people who comment when we've talked about games in the past, and people calling us out and saying, like, this never happened, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And it's like, okay, cool. I mean, we're only telling our accounts of it, and this isn't life or death. It's just Warhammer 40,000. And as much as I love it and am invested in it, so much so that I do this on a regular basis, I still, don't want to ever be in a situation where, I'm taking it that seriously. And I kind of hope that the people I'm playing against have the same attitude, but who knows? People are people, right?
People are people,
Yeah,
and you can never account for people.
There's definitely like a nuance to kind of calling people on kind of rules conflicts and trying to do it in a nice way. And I think the more you do the tournament stuff, the more you kind of work out how to do it in a sort of polite manner without having to necessarily go, "You're a dirty liar." You can actually just, because I think a lot of the rules interpretations are just, sometimes people just don't know the rule because weirdly, it's like they tend to get taught by a friend, or they haven't just read the rules, or they've watched a back rep on YouTube and it's been done wrong, which invariably tends to be the case. Or quite often it's a house rule.
Yeah.
I remember it was like probably a few years ago in one of our first events where the same thing happened to me that happened to you, in terms of I had screened my models on the top floor so he can charge me in, but he was like an orc player and he was like, "Wah!" and he literally chucked them all on my models. And I was a bit like, "Please don't damage my models." And then that time it was kind of like game over at that point anyway. And it was like, on one hand it is a bit shenanigans to try and block someone from charging you by saying you can't fit your model up here, and ITC do a rule to reflect that. But within the sort of rules of the game, for standard, Games Workshop 40k, that's exactly how you can play it. So, when it happened to me, I was like, "Oh, whatever, I can't be bothered to argue it." And sometimes the rules don't necessarily matter, and it's like, if it's not going to impact on the game, fair enough. I think when I was talking about my back reps from the last podcast, I played a Dark Elder player, and I was convinced that I could pile in, attack, and then I could consolidate to move my models closer to the objective, or to lock another unit of his into combat. And he was like, no, you can only consolidate if you wipe out the unit. And I was like, I don't think you're right, but whatever, it doesn't make a difference at this point, whatever. But then actually much later on in the game, it was literally the one move that I had to sort of win the game. And there was some people around us like Joe, and I was like, "Look, anyone can consolidate, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course you can." And I sort of just then clarified that with my opponent and made sure he was okay with it. And then I did it. Although ironically, that probably did cost me the game, which I already explained in my last podcast. So, sometimes I think it's important, even if it doesn't feel like it's that important, maybe it is worth clarifying your position on it, because it might impact your game further down the line.
Yeah. It's a strange thing to even begin to explain, but I find it's just about being consistent. It's about, at the start of the game, this is a this and this is a that. Also, as well, if you're playing against opponents with certain types of units that benefit from certain types of scenarios, illustrating to your opponent that you know those things as well, just to kind of again, assert the fact that you know some of the rules and that you're not going to necessarily be caught out. I like to kind of just go, oh yeah, and that's strength 7, AP -3. Yeah, I know that one. You know, just chuck in a few little stats. I find just to kind of make your opponent, you know, click in their mind where they go, okay, cool. He knows what the ballistic skill is of all my units, right? Okay. Or you know, you come up against a Tau player and you go, any velocity trackers? Oh yeah, just 2. Okay, cool. Who's got them? Those and those. Right, great, cheers. Or come up against a knight opponent. And you go, and this is one of the most common ones I do when I play against knight opponents at Warhammer World. I go around. That's a ruin. That's a ruin. Yep, cool, fine. Just to clarify, obviously everything here is Cities of Death terrain, bar this Sector Mechanicus thing. But for the purposes of Devastating Reach, we are going to acknowledge and accept that all of these ruins that are Cities of Death are Sector Imperialis for the purpose of that rule. You happy with that? And obviously your knight opponent is like, well, yeah, of course I am, because that benefits me massively. But again, turns a little cog in their brain where they go, hang on, this guy knows this book really well if he's making these points, and then, you know, they realise that, you know, when you assert yourself later with a point where you go, you can't do that, though, you're wrong, they kind of probably go, oh, hang on, maybe I can't be so assertive in this situation, maybe I better check. And as long as you're right most of the time, we'll be okay. But again, that takes, I mean, I would encourage no one to be like me and buy every single 40k codex and read it cover to cover and absorb all the rules and then have a brain full of this stuff, because, you know, it's not helpful. But in real life anyway. But for these purposes, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
There you go. Cool, man. Well, sounds like you had a good event, barring a few little moments. But, you know, really appreciate you taking the time to come back again and tell us about it for the second time.
Oh,
I'm not
no,
sure
that's
if
all right.
that was better or worse than the first time around we did it. But let's not dwell on that. Let's focus on the fact that we've done it now and people hopefully enjoyed it. I can imagine.
Before we go, Tim, can you tell us how you did and like where you placed and things like your favourite game votes and stuff?
Oh God, I have no idea where I placed.
Tim.
I know. I don't pay attention to such things like that, but I do know that I got 5 favourite painted army votes and 4 favourite game votes.
So one shy of the Knights of the Inner Circle.
Again, yeah.
That's incredible, mate. That is, I mean, what a scenario to be one shy.
Yeah. Oh well, there's always next year. I'm going to get it next year.
Always next year, or later this year, should you want to go along again.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. If I have the army ready in time, maybe, but we shall see.
Come on, mate. I reckon you should do it. One more time for the boys.
For the boys.
I'm just looking at the score sheet now. Tim came 83rd place.
Hey.
Oh no, 80th place, sorry. 83 was something else. I don't know what 83 refers to. 83 was just his number. That was his player number.
That was my number.
And he came 80th place. 15 tournament points. And as he says there, 4 for 5. What a boy.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
There you go. And then, the interesting thing is here, Tim, is that you said in one of your games you got all your secondary scores. According to your sheet, you didn't.
Oh, did I not? Oh,
you got 0, 1, and 3, so you got 0 first strikes, 1 Slay the Warlord, and 3 line breakers, apparently.
Oh, well, I must have remembered.
Unless there was another Tim Wilson doing the rounds.
No. I must have got muddled up with something else then.
Or possibly you wrote it down wrong.
It could have been written. Yeah, could have been written down
entirely
wrong.
possible.
So much going on in the crazy weekend.
Exactly. Though, again, and obviously he won't thank us for saying it, it looks like here you came higher up than Rich Church. So Richie,
really? Where did he place?
86th.
Oh, that's why he kind of didn't remember it. Oh, well.
Yeah, that's why.
I'm not a bottom feeder. Well, I am, but I'm not like the bottom feeder.
That's it.
So it's like you've got to take over quiz duties now.
I know.
Oh, is that how it works?
To be fair, Rich is probably going to go to another GP, and I'm sure he'll qualify. He's got the brains too.
Yeah, he does. He'll do all right. He just had a bit of a bad time with that particular one, but yeah, there's a high likelihood that me and Rich will go to another GT just to have another go. I don't know what I'll do. I'm not really trying to win or do anything especially clever, so I'll probably just turn up with something fun that I can, just get drunk and enjoy the weekend around.
Yeah.
Didn't you have an idea for some kind of weird fortification list?
Well, yeah, I've been mucking around with a fortification army, but I can't decide what the best things to put in it is. Genestealer Cult actually seems like it could be a fun option, but then I don't really want to do GSC, so then it becomes, I don't know, Space Marines or something. It's a weird one. I can't decide right now, but yeah, there's a high likelihood that I might turn up with a fortification army.
Do it.
It'd just be 3 Imperial Bastions and some and then maybe some Imperial bunkers, and I'll just line them up and go boop boop boop, and then just put all my stuff in it and go, cool, I'm not moving. You got to get me out of here. I'm staying here.
Even if it's like narrow the search, I'm staying here.
I'm staying here in my bunkers.
Guns.
Yeah. I
To be
mean,
fair, you could just shoot them off the objective, so it's fine.
potentially. I mean, there's a lot of shooting that can be done out of those things. So the Bastion has 4 heavy bolters. And it's something like toughness 9, 20 wounds, free up armor save or something. Or maybe it's 30 wounds. I can't remember exactly. But it has like 10 fire points in it, so you can have 10 dudes inside firing out of it. Or maybe it's only 5, or I'll say 10. So you could put like 2 Devastator squads in there with heavy bolters, on the thing, and just be like, bullets!
Do you actually have to like put them on the top of the Bastion, or do they?
No, you just put them in it.
Oh, they're just saying they're inside it.
Yeah, it's a transport essentially.
Ah, that's kind of cool.
Well, it is until you realise that if you're playing, say, an Orc opponent or something of that nature, all they have to do is wrap the thing and then hit it a bunch, and then everything inside dies. So it's not without its flaws, but
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how many actually people do that.
well, hopefully someone who listens to this will realise that's a thing. Should I come up against them with my stupid Bastion list? I'm trying to get hold of one of those plasma incinerator things, or whatever they're called.
Oh, the ones that
Obliterators?
Yeah, that's the one. The really mad plasma tower that they did, and then maybe some bastions and some Imperial bunkers, and then just fill them with Devastator Marines with hopefully Imperial Fist tactics by then, so that I can just literally stay in AP -2 heavy bolter mode, raining down horror on everyone.
Do it.
The thing is, the way I've just explained it makes it sound actually good, but it isn't at all.
Yeah, but do it.
All right, brilliant. Well, there you go. Tim, as always, mate, it's a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you very much for giving us your account of your 80th place finish in the Warhammer 40,000 Heat 2 GT. And
And for doing it 2 days in a row.
Yeah,
No. It's my absolute pleasure. I'm here to represent the newbie community,
exactly.
and I take my role seriously, sort of.
You do it well. Thanks very much, pal. We'll move on now.
Cool.
Tim? So thank you, everybody, for checking out episode 29 of the Look Out Sir 40k podcast. We couldn't have done it without you. If, a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, did it actually make a sound? And the same is true of this segment. If no one was there to listen to it, did it actually happen? Although I suppose Phil, Joe and Rich on this occasion got to listen to it, so I suppose irrespective of you listening to it, it did sort of happen.
It definitely feels like it happened.
Well, exactly. It has all of the tropes of a thing that occurred. But there you go. So yeah, episode 29. So how did we feel about that episode? Mixing up with a quiz, I thought that went well.
It went pretty good. My first quiz was a disappointment. I'm going to be totally honest. There's a lot of favouritism going to the other players.
I wouldn't say it's favouritism. They got the answers right, and you didn't.
Well, there was a lot of what colour is the sky, what colour is grass kind of questions going on.
And you didn't know the answer to that, you moron.
Well, are you complaining because there's a lot of questions about recent news updates about the Games Workshop 40k hobby, and you didn't read up on them in advance.
Well, yes.
Okay.
I love Joe's.
Tell you what, next time I'll read everything, and just like Phil and Dan, I'll have a screen with Warhammer Community on when we do the quiz.
Phil, you hearing this? He's accusing us of foul play.
I mean, if that was really the case, I'd like to think I would have won.
Maybe it's a ruse, and you're working against me, the two of you. You're just going to take it in turns to win until I'm officially downtrodden, and I just spend my evenings crying.
I'll tell you what, we didn't do that, but that is such a good idea. We'll do it for the next episode.
Absolutely. We'll have to start adding in forfeits for the worst performing player.
I don't like this.
Such as you having to produce a video series about flags.
Oh, that's easily doable.
What happened to those unboxing videos, by the way, Joe? Those were things that you said you were going to do, but never did.
I haven't had a box to open, if I'm totally honest.
That can't be right. You've opened many a box in that time.
They haven't had like a big release, have they? Like
Yes,
in terms
they
of like
have.
big box. Well, yeah, but there's no been like big box set releases, like the 2 Army ones.
I mean, there was Armageddon.
Yeah, but
Oh, not Armageddon, Apocalypse, sorry.
but no one really cared about that.
Imperialis.
Yeah? Imperialis.
What Imperialis?
You know, Aeronautica Imperialis, or whatever he's saying.
But would have people cared about that enough?
Yes, Joe. Yes. If you had done an unboxing, they would have loved it.
Would they?
I'm just concerned, Joe, that you're not, holding up your end.
Oh, believe me, I am.
Yeah?
I just do it in the shadows.
Is that what it is? You work
Yeah.
you work in the angles behind the scenes, like the Alpha Legion.
Yeah, basically, I get everything done around here. You just can't see it or feel it.
There you go. But you know it in your heart.
That's it. That's how I validate my participation on this podcast.
Well, exactly. No, Joe, honestly, mate, it wouldn't be the same without you, buddy. Thank you very much for everything you've done over the past 29 episodes.
I know.
And what you're about to do for episode 30.
What am I doing for episode 30?
I don't know. We'll talk about it off the air, to use the old hip, cool terminology.
It's not like your Mormon's idea, is it?
No, I really, really regret the fact that never happened.
Yeah. And
Wait,
that's
what was the Mormon
to clarify.
I was...
Yeah, we're going to become Mormons.
Well, no,
Richie.
we weren't going to become Mormons. We were going to sing one of the
Oh,
songs.
we're going to sing from the Book of Mormon. I remember that
Yeah,
idea.
exactly.
Glad I did that.
I wrote like alternate versions of the lyrics. I got the music all lined up. I started trying it out and stuff, but apparently all you guys were really paranoid about the idea of singing on the podcast.
Well, let's ask the listeners. If we get 10 comments on any of our different social platforms saying do the song, we will do the song.
There you go. Will you abide by the rules of that sacred covenant now, Joe?
I'm going to have to now, aren't I?
Well, that tends to be how it is. I mean, Phil's probably the more difficult one. He does not fancy himself a singer.
No. I mean, let's clarify. It has to be 10 different people commenting,
Oh yeah, it has
not
to be
one
10.
person commenting 10
It can't
times.
just be one person doing it 10 times because they think it'd be hilarious to get you to sing.
Well,
It
exactly.
can
I
be
trust
10
a man who says that he can't sing.
Well, I mean, we can all sing, Joe, just to varying degrees.
Yeah.
You know, we're not all Rihanna or other popular singers. Is she still a popular singer, a Rihanna?
You might
I
be.
don't know.
I've lost track, mate. I don't understand what the children listen to anymore.
Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift. She's still a thing.
There you go. Taylor Swift and I've forgotten any other names. They've all gone.
McBusted.
Busted. Yes, that was a good time in UK music history. Good times all round. Was there a Duff? What was the Duff?
I mean,
Hillary Duff?
Is she a singer? Is she Hilary Duff?
About 10 years ago.
I always
No.
thought of
There was a Duffy as well.
a Duffy.
Yeah.
Ooh.
She did the Warwick Avenue song.
I can't remember if Sean, our illustrious secret friend Sean, was really into the Duff at one point.
The Duff?
He definitely. I can always remember there was some weird, obscure like country singer from like 2005 that he would always talk about being his ideal woman.
Was it Taylor Swift?
No, it wasn't Taylor Swift. No.
I don't know. I'm not up to date with my country singers.
No, likewise. And on that, I imagine we should probably conclude. Thank you very much for checking out the show. As we said at the intro segment, please, if you would like to share the joy of the Lookout Surf 40k podcast with your friends, please do so, because it helps us, I guess. It means that we get more listeners, and then we feel more warm and fuzzy, and that enables us to do more of the stuff that we're seemingly doing, regardless of that whole sense of warm and fuzziness. But nonetheless, you never know. We might decide at some point to reevaluate what the heck we've been doing with our lives up to this point. And if it's not that we achieve a certain level of fame and glory, maybe we'll stop doing it. And you don't want that. You don't want us to go away. You want to keep on doing this till we're dead. And we do too. So tell your friends. It'll be great. Did I oversell it that time, Phil? Was that too much?
No, we spot on.
Spot on, good. All right, great. Well, anyway, look, there you go, guys. Thank you very much for checking out the show. Head over to our social media if you want to say some nice things and or tell your friends. And that's us out of here. Thanks very much, guys. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye. So,
I can imagine that as terrifying.
Sorry, Joe, say that again.
So I can only imagine that was terrifying.
Well, while we were away and seeking the buzzer noises, I found out that, it was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Next Mutation. So, there you go. And if you guys were to, take a look at the chat group right now, you would see some beautiful imagery from that show.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear.
Here you go. Happy memories of a dark time in children's television.
Hang on. How do I do that? Oh my god, I've broken my phone.
Brilliant. Just wait till you see the images.
I can't. Oh no, because if I go off of it.
It's in the Skype chat that we're conducting this conversation in, Joe.
Oh, how do I get to there? Oh god, yeah.
Can we just get on with the quiz?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to edit all this out, so don't worry about it. Joe, react to your buzzer again, and we'll carry on.
Hang on. Well, no, because now I've gone off the screen. Because I'm on my phone. The moment I come off that screen.
Oh dear.
Oh Lord.
With the buzz, I'm not all technical like you. I don't have like a computer.
Joe, you back in yet?
Hang on.
Just reset yourself to a normal
just
state.
to be fair, he is still in.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure he's happy.
I'm in now. Does it work?
Are you happy?
Press the button. I've buzzed.
Cool.
Brilliant. All right, Joe, respond to the sound of your buzzer again. We'll ignore that whole conversation that ever took place.
Hello?
For fuck's sake. React to your buzzer. So just pretend we've just done the bit where it says do the buzzer.
No, because I changed from like normal internet signal to Wi-Fi. So it just completely cut me out of the Skype capture.
Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, when you're ready, Joe, come on.